coverage of free agency, the big frenzy day. Where are some of the top guys going to go? Big questions about Johnny Gaudreau, Johnny Hockey, Nazem Kadri, Claude Giroux, a lot of big names on the market. Plus, we've already seen some intriguing trades and signings. So we are going to be here for the next couple of hours breaking it all down. First off, introductions are in order. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm the host of Locked On Predators, and I have plenty of partner in crimes here today, including below me, Brett Holden from Locked On Oilers. What's up, Brett?
Not too bad. It's a busy day. How about you?
Keeping it real, man. It is having a blast here today. We got Jess Belmosto from Locked On Flames, who I'm sure is on pins and needles, wondering what's going to happen to number 13 today. What's up, Jess?
Oh, just hanging on every tweet notification I get. That's where I'm at.
I'm sure, as we went through Forsberg the past several months, I'm sure every tweet is going to be a situation where you just read way too much into it. And last but not least, right now we have Jay Forster from Locked On Blue Jackets, my fellow Ohioan, sort of. Jay, what's up, man?
I'm good. I'm just here for the chaos. That's what I want out of today. I want chaos.
Who knows? You may, and that in the background is my dog. You will if there's something he objects to throughout the day. So yeah, it's noon right now, noon Eastern. Free agents can officially sign. When we do get some stuff, we'll be here to break it. And it looks like we actually do have our first big signing. Elliot Friedman tweeting Giroux to the Ottawa Senators. Pierre LeBrun said that the same thing. Looks like 6.5 million AAV. Quick reactions, guys. Seemed like this was kind of something that we knew was going to happen a little bit a couple days ago.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know when Ottawa became a destination, but it looks like they're having a lot of fun, and good for them.
Yeah, as somebody who covers the Oilers, that was a name that really seemed like he could have been potentially somebody that the Oilers were wanting, somebody that really would have fit with the Oilers. Obviously, they decided to go with Kane, and Giroux goes home. So that's exciting. Like Jess says, they're a destination now.
Yeah, as someone who has recently discovered that I want to collect every Ohio-born hockey player and keep them on the Blue Jackets forever, like I respect Giroux wanting to go home, and I think it was either going to be Ottawa or maybe staying in Florida. Like those were his options, and clearly he's like, "Hey, the grass looks greener in Ottawa," which is still a weird thing to say.
It is weird, but all of a sudden, you have Brady Tkachuk, you have Josh Norris, two players that look like legitimate top-line stars. They had a very, very solid end to last season, and, they may be looking at times like, look, we're ready to kind of move forward with this rebuild, maybe add some punch. And if you're looking for guys to kind of help build that next generation of players like Ottawa needs right now, you can't find anybody better than Claude Giroux to really come in and help that locker room and help those young players develop.
Well, he's a guy who's done it before. I mean, he hasn't won a cup, but that's what he's going for, right? We barely mentioned Alex DeBrincat as well, who he brought in, Cam Talbot as well. They have a lot of very exciting guys that they brought in, not only this year, but also the established group that they do have as well. They're a young D-core, a young, exciting core as well. And Claude Giroux's taking a look. Hey, I get to play at home. They look like they might be contenders. Could this be the spot?
It's all about going home.
It's all about going home.
Yeah.
Team.
Brett, maybe some information that you would like. We have apparently your boy Jack Campbell going to Edmonton. Looks like a 5-year deal. Is the goalie situation done in Edmonton? Is this the guy?
Is this the guy? He seems to be. I have been quite vocal recently that I don't think if the Edmonton Oilers want to win now, I don't think Jack Campbell is the guy. However, Ken Holland and Brad Holland and the Edmonton Oilers believe so. And now I have to, yes, accept the fact that he is the goaltender. But again, I mean, hey, it's not Matt Murray, but we're not taking any strays towards the Toronto Maple Leafs here. For Jack Campbell, he's obviously recently, in the last 4 or so seasons, recently come up and as somebody who's a viable option in the NHL. And going into last season, he was a Vezina Trophy favorite, not just the candidate, not just maybe he was the betting favorite to win the Vezina Trophy this year. And obviously his numbers the year before were amazing. 17 wins, 13 losses all season for him, 2 in the in overtime or shootouts. And then you take a look at those kind of goals against average, I should say, at 2.15 for him, which was much better. As an Oiler, as somebody who covers the Oilers and a lifelong Oilers fan, seeing a goaltender with a sub basically 250 is very nice to see. And as well, the save percentage was at a .921 that season as well. You see where the allure comes from and why he's getting that money in terms. So I like it. I've grown to it. I've grown to the idea. Obviously, we still have Stuart Skinner that they're going to be kind of platooning, I guess. We'll see, obviously, as the season goes along, how Jack Campbell does. The knock on him is inconsistency. So can a Stuart Skinner, who's been around the organization for a little while, step up when he can.
Yeah, a lot of free agencies coming in. A lot of signings just got announced. So you'll have to bear with us. We're going to go through them all and get lots of reactions to all of them as they come in. But first, you may notice we had a new addition down there in the bottom right of your screen. Kyle Sullivan from Locked On Avalanche joining us. Kyle, busy couple of weeks from you. You won the Cup. Now you have a couple of guys that you need to go out there and sign. Yeah, that behind you, right there to your left, by far the actual Stanley Cup. I'm glad they brought it out for you to enjoy for this Locked On NHL live reaction show.
Yeah, it's the advantages of being affiliated with the Avalanche. It's great.
Yeah. So yeah, Kyle, you guys went out and you signed Val Nichushkin. You got him back. You brought Josh Manson back today. Looks like you're also bringing back Darren Helm. That leaves Nazem Kadri and Ondrej Burakovsky as kind of your big guns that are not back yet, still on the open market. Any chance that they come back? Colorado makes a late offer, or do you think at this point the Avs are probably moving on?
There is a reason those two names have not been signed yet, and I think it's for two different reasons. I think the Ondrej Burakovsky experience in Colorado has come to a close for everything that he's brought to the team. Granted, on paper, he has 2 rings. Like, he's won 2 Stanley Cups, one with Washington, one with Colorado. But honestly, his inconsistency has been the narrative throughout his time in Colorado, and I doubt that the Avalanche are willing to take another gamble on Burakovsky next year and give him another deal when the Colorado Eagles, our AHL affiliate, are so deep with forward talent. It's about time that you give them a try. So I think, honestly, the writing's on the wall that Burakovsky is going to take a walk, and good luck to your future endeavors. He's a great talent. Like, he's really dedicated this year to improving his game and finding his shot. So if he could find a new home to do that, a fresh scenery, I think that'll be great for Burakovsky. For Naz, if you listen to anything on Locked On Avalanche, you know that he is literally my favorite player in the league. He has been my favorite player since his days in Toronto. And when he signed in Colorado, I literally had a parade through the house. He is literally my favorite player in the game. But he's at a point in his career where he has to start thinking about after hockey. And if that's finding a place closer to home, finally getting a really good contract where you can get overpaid. You've done enough in your career. This last season, you've changed the narrative on your career. You're no longer that dirty, goonery player. Like, you sold out for your team, and the team, like you saw in the St. Louis series, they stuck up for you. And he's at a point where he's done it all. He's proved it. He's won his cup. Now he could go find somewhere and enjoy the game of hockey for once.
The big headline there, and I think we all agree, Nazem Kadri, really, really good story last year, especially in the postseason. Big part of that Avalanche team. Wound up being a perfect trade for Colorado, one of many Joe Sakic trades. It seems like the headliner today, though, is going to be Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau. I can see the pain on Jess's face. Right. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't blame me. I didn't know.
I know.
But Jess, it's kind of been a weird time for the Flames because obviously they still want to bring Matthew Tkachuk back. We know he's a restricted free agent. Mangiapane also is due a new contract. It seems like they really went all out to try to bring Johnny Hockey back, but it seems like there is just kind of a point, Jess, in which they had to go, we have to make some decisions there.
Yeah, it's the silver lining here is that you have $11 million in unused cap space now without signing him. So can you make a big splash today? That's, no one is going to replace Johnny. There's no, you can't plop someone in there and say, okay, like this fixes the problem. Can you kind of retool and still be competitive? Sure. But how long are you looking at Matthew Tkachuk staying in Calgary? That's the next big question. Does he sign his QO and you trade him within a year? Or do you push him to sign a long-term deal? And thank you. Locked On Flames needs a new host. I appreciate that. That's just the name of the game. But I just am very interested to see how they work out these next two deals between Mangiapane and Tkachuk. I know that Mangiapane's agent has said that he doesn't want to do a 1 year, 2 year deal. He wants something long term. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I think negotiating with the Tkachuks is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be, Brady's negotiations were an appetizer compared to what we might see with Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's going to be kind of an interesting thing where Gadreau goes. And I'll ask you guys, it seems like he wants to go to Philadelphia. Doesn't really seem like that's going to happen. First off, let me just say, I have the slightest idea what the Flyers are doing right now, because it just seems like their entire build is an absolute cluster right now. So maybe it seems like the New Jersey Devils are a backup. Anybody disagree with that?
Apparently we turned down a deal.
Go ahead, Jay.
I think Gadreau wants Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia has put themselves out of the conversation because when you're paying Rasmus Ristolainen and Tony DeAngelo $10 million, there's not a lot of space left over for a guy like Gadreau. So I think the Devils are probably his second option, but I think that's probably where he ends up. They have the cap space. It's close to home. I personally hate it because I don't want him in the Metro to embarrass the Blue Jackets 5 times a season, but it is what it is,
Yeah, I kind of find the Johnny Hockey to New Jersey conversation a little interesting because Johnny Hockey and Hughes are almost the same player. And that's a weird fit to me. But you could see with the moves they made this morning, like they're really bolstering the front office and the coaching staff. And they're really making moves with the move of Pavel Zacha. Like they're really building something here. And like the writing's on the wall that something big is coming. How the fit works is interesting. I don't know if it's concerning if you could get production out of both of them, but we'll have to see what New Jersey does. Philly, they have been loud about every big name signing from like possible Claude Giroux to Nazem Kadri to now Johnny Hockey. They're going after every big name, but overpaying the ones that they have. And with the head coaching that they have in Philly, I don't think anybody really wants to go there right now. So, like, Philly could be as loud as they possibly want, but I doubt they're going to be getting exactly what they want, and they're going to be reactive to all the free agency moves instead of proactive.
Yeah, I feel like Gadreau and Tortorella is a... I feel like they would probably clash. Gadreau does not play Tortorella-style hockey, and that feels... Again, I wonder how much of Philly's the moves that Philly's making. For example, I was floored that they drafted Cutter Gauthier 5th overall when David Jiricek was still on the board. That's such a Philadelphia, that's such a Tortorella pick that it makes me think they're probably building the team around the coach rather than picking a coach to fit the team, which, as someone who has just suffered through several years of Tortorella coached hockey, I don't necessarily think he's the worst coach to have for a rebuilding team, but the Flyers are doing this thing where they're like, no, we're not rebuilding. Look, we have so much money. We have all of these veteran players. Like, it's almost like they're trying to cling on to the last, the last bits of their competency by hiring a coach that is not the right fit. And so now they're like, well, now we have to make the team fit the coach because otherwise he'll just bench the players, which again, we saw in Columbus during the end, towards the end of his tenure. So
I got to run here. I'm so sorry to cut you off there. I got to run here just really quick here. But I just want to say from the Oilers side, it's tough to see Johnny go. It truly is. But yes, I do have to run really quick if that is okay, everybody. So enjoy free agency. I'll be back in a little bit if that's okay.
Yeah, we know Brett's got to go record a reaction to the Jack Campbell signing. So we'll have him back here in a second. And I'm sure we're going to have more Johnny hockey talk in a second. First, other signings. We saw the Toronto Maple Leafs go after Matt Murray. They also just bring in Ilya Samsonov, a 1-year deal, $1.8 million cap hit. A little bit no idea what Toronto's doing in goal right now, but Samsonov, to me, that would have maybe been a better one option than Matt Murray. I mean, he's not like a world beater goalie, but I mean, he's good enough that if you put a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs in front of him, he can go out there and be at least somewhat competitive. I would have rather had him as kind of my first option if I'm the Maple Leafs than Matt Murray. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Leafs is that it's kind of the same story as with the Avalanche, and this is no disrespect to Darcy Kuemper, who I thought was very good this season, and Pavel Francouz, who was very good in the postseason. A team like the Avalanche and a team like the Maple Leafs, they need league average goaltending to succeed. They do not need a Vezina candidate in goal. They can succeed with league average goaltending. If they can get league average goaltending out of Matt Murray, they're fine. I personally also would go Samsonov over Murray. That might be their plan. Toronto, they love to overreact. They love to panic and change things. I would be very surprised if either of those guys is a legitimate starter. I think it's way more likely they're going to play those guys in a tandem, especially Matt Murray starting to age out of his prime. Oh, he's younger than I always think he is. I think he's 28, 29. So he's starting to decline. Samsonov's still really young, still not done fully developing. So I don't necessarily love that they have to pay Matt Murray $1 bajillion for the next 3 seasons, but I think it is what it is. They don't need Ondrej Vasilevsky on the Leafs. They don't need him. So
I think if Toronto's going to make these moves for Samsonov and Matt Murray, if you're trying to play the copycat game of how the Colorado Avalanche built their team this year and trying to follow that blueprint of league serviceable goaltending, you have to address defense. And that's something Toronto hasn't done for quite some time. They work hand in hand. The goalie position, we made Darcy Kuemper look all world. And we brought in Pavel Francouz in the playoffs to step in when Darcy Kuemper was injured. And it's the defense and how they react around the goalie position and who's in there. If you look back at the bubble season, we were winning games with Michael Hutchinson in goal. So it's not about really who you have back there. It's how the defense reacts. And Toronto has had issues on defense for quite some time. So if they're trying to do this reactionary, well, if that works for them, it'll work for us because we're the Leafs. You have to address your your defensive position, and you have to do that now before everybody starts picking them out of free agency. I think they're going about it backwards, and I think this is also going to be a step back for them going forward.
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to see because, as Kyle mentioned, there is kind of the blueprint of if there's a good team in front of you, you can kind of put whoever you want in goal as long as they're average. But it's easier to do that and win when you have Cale Makar and Devon Toews playing right in front of you than whatever rolls of tape the Toronto Maple Leafs are rolling past Jake Muzzin and Morgan Riley. More signings coming in, nothing too huge yet, other than the ones we've mentioned, Thomas Greiss and Nick Leddy going back to St. Louis. Sure, fine, whatever. Who cares that much? Justin Schultz going to Seattle. That's another one that, hey, whatever. Sure, why not? Yeah, there's a couple of guys out there, and I want to talk about this maybe as our next topic. We've talked about the Gadreaus. We've talked about the Nazem Kadris. Who are some of the next tier of players? Maybe some guys that aren't getting a lot of mention from either the national outlets or ranks that you think would be a good fit for your particular team. Jess, I'll start with you.
Well, the Flames just signed Kevin Rooney, who is, I guess, a good defensive fourth liner who can kill a penalty. So, I'll take that for what it is because there's no way that they can keep rolling out Milan Lucic with Trevor Lewis and Brett Ritchie. That line.
To be fair, that would have been a great line in like the 2014 NHL season.
Yeah, it would have been effective and a little bit more than what it was now, but it just, taking penalties left and right was not great. And I think that to have Kevin Rooney, I know everyone kind of he's a depth player, and I think that it'll take a little bit of time to get used to that, but it definitely adds to Sutter's system in terms of a good two-way forward. So I'll take it.
Jay, who's somebody you would like to see maybe under the radar that the Blue Jackets can get today?
So I have a couple options here, and I think that the Blue Jackets are looking for a center in free agency. I think that's why we drafted mostly defense with our higher picks in the draft. There's a couple of names. Dylan Strome is probably the biggest over the radar one. I think obviously not being qualified by Chicago, everyone's like, oh, where's Dylan Strome gonna land? I think Andrew Copp is not getting as much not credit, but I think not a lot of people are paying as much attention to Andrew Copp. And I don't know why that is, because I think he's very good. His underlying stats are great, and I think he could be a very good 2C on a team like Columbus, who don't really have any top six centers that are not 18 years old. So he's definitely one that I'm watching. I know that the Red Wings have been heavily linked to him, so I'm assuming he's off the board, but he's someone that I am hopeful for on the Blue Jackets.
Kyle, who's a couple underrated guys you think the Avalanche could bring in maybe to supplement the guys you have there right now?
Honestly, I think Colorado's approach going into this offseason is not so much an acquisition, it's retention and growing from within. There isn't really a need to go out there and sign, honestly, any of these free agents. Like, you just let Nazem Kadri and Burakovsky walk out the door without blinking an eye. I think the Avs are really concerned about shoring up the goalie position, which you saw with the acquisition of Georgiev, and paying less. What Darcy Kuemper is about to get in Washington is going to be more than what Colorado was willing to pay. And I think the Avalanche are just mainly working on trying to get the cap where they want it. And it's more of sit back and wait, because I feel like Joe Sakic is going to do what he's going to do. He's going to wait for these free agency moves and these trades to not work. and then Joe Sakic come knocking on the door come trade deadline time and say, hey, I see things aren't working. Let's clear this up and then get something on the cheap. I feel like the Avalanche are going to approach the rest of this day as very just take care of their own, maybe bring up a couple Eagles coming into camp. But I think all of the moves that they're going to make are about done. I know the rumors for Patty Kane to Colorado are loud. There are a couple, like I see, like Yeti Report in the comments talking about Johnny Hockey to the Burgundy and Blue, but that's the advantage of being like the king of the mountain. That everybody you assume that you're a destination, that everybody wants to come play for you, but that's not where the Avalanche are focused right now.
Does it feel like Johnny Gaudreau after all this? Doesn't it just seem like this is a situation that ends with him in Vegas for some reason? Like Vegas with no cap space whatsoever, like somehow gets away with it and brings him in, and all of a sudden you have 2 lines and then like an ECHL roster on the rest of your team. Like it just seems like this is like something that would be totally Vegas on brand.
It would make me feel great if he would land to a Vegas or a Buffalo, or even if he landed on Seattle. My goodness, he could change that franchise. By the way, Seattle is going to be a problem in a couple years, so everyone keep your eyes on that team. They're about to come through the league and start making some noise. But you're watching the Johnny Hockey sweepstakes, hoping he falls to one of those Buffalo, Seattle, like a lower tier team, because like for the Avalanche, you don't want him following to a St. Louis, a Minnesota, an LA, like, because that's a player that could change a franchise. For like teams that are of that mindset of take care of your own, we like where we're going, let's build on this. If Johnny Hockey falls to a division rival, then that changes everything for Colorado.
You did get one question, Kyle, in the comments. Arturo Lehkonen. That's a guy that he's a restricted free agent. We know Colorado really likes him. We know he's going to get a pretty good raise. Any word on that?
I feel like the Avalanche front office right now are working on Nathan MacKinnon and seeing what we have to do there before they address Lehkonen. Lehkonen, in his addition since the trade deadline, he's been incredible. I mean, aside from that 3-headed monster of the top line, you could say Nichushkin and Lehkonen are neck and neck for the second best wave on this Colorado Avalanche team. So once you take care of Nathan MacKinnon's contract, I know he's still got one more year, but you want to start working on that extension so you have an idea for what next year will look like, because then you're going to tie up Cale Makar, Gabe Landeskog, Mikko Rantanen, and Nathan MacKinnon. Once you take care of that, you have Nichushkin taken care of, and then Lehkonen. Lehkonen is soon to be done, but Nathan MacKinnon first.
A couple more trades coming in just now, or not trades. We do have trades we'll talk about in a second, or I guess proposed trades. It looks like, according to Emily Kaplan, Vincent Trojek going to the New York Rangers. That's kind of an underrated signing to me. Trojek is a guy that, at least to me, is a pretty good support player, second, third line. Somebody who I think he is best when he's helping out a team that already has a lot of high-end talent. Like when he's like not the guy, but maybe like the second or third option when it comes to depth. Interesting pick, and that's somebody that I think is going to make the Rangers better. I think, probably somebody that's an upgrade from Ryan Strome.
Definitely. However, it's a 7-year contract. That is a lot of years for Vincent Trojek, who is on the decline, shall we say. I think, like you said, he's a very serviceable player. He could be very good. He probably should get pretty sheltered minutes, but 7 years is a long contract for an old guy,
Oh, I just noticed the 7 years. Ooh.
He was a guy that I was thinking about for the Blue Jackets as well as that 2C option, but I was like, he's got the name recognition that can command, like Kyle was just saying about Nazem Kadri, he can go out and he can command that 7-year contract of, probably 5 or 6 million because people know who he is, and he's earned that right to go out and get, maybe overpaid. So he was a guy that I eventually was like, you know what? No, I don't think the Blue Jackets need him on their team. But yeah, I think he'll make New York better in the short term. That contract might be a problem in the long term.
That's a big bet. That is a big bet on a certain player. Also, another piece of signing, Robert Thomas re-signing in St. Louis. He was a restricted free agent, 8 years, it looks like just over $8 million a year. Yeah, I mean, I guess the future of St. Louis and Robert Thomas's hands now. I still, whenever I hear his name, think of Matchbox 20, but
Yep.
I think you should lean into that. Yeah.
I'm too young for Matchbox 20.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just missed that cut.
Anytime I think about him, other than Matchbox 20, I think of the 2019 Stanley Cup, where Torrey Krug just kind of bulldozed him, and then months later, they're teammates.
What's that conversation like when you get into the locker room? Like, you're famous for like messing with a guy,
right? Like, hey, sorry that this happened. Congrats on the cup. Can we put that behind us now?
Yeah. Like, one of my favorite stories that have to do with that was when Dominik Hasek got traded to the Red Wings before the 2001-2002 season, and he wound up with Brett Hull, and everybody wanted to ask him about the foot in the crease thing, and it's like, oh yeah, did you guys talk about that? And then like both dead set tones, both of them go like, we don't discuss it. Like, there's still like some old wounds there.
Yeah, you can. You can't cover up playoff. What's the right word for it? Pain, I guess. You can never cover because. Hey, Kyle, take a look over your shoulder. It's all about that thing. At the end of it, that's all. I mean, you take a look at any of most of really the signings here, and a lot of them mention I'm coming to a team that I want to win a championship with or can win a championship. Well, at the end of the day or at the end of the season, only one of those teams gets to lift the trophy, and 20x amount of players get to lift it over their heads and call themselves a Stanley Cup champion. However that gets done is how it gets done.
Yeah, it was just maybe a year or two ago that the Avalanche acquired their former rival in Devin Dubnik as a backup goalie option. Like, he was a thorn in the side for Colorado for years, and he was out there. They brought him in. Granted, he did not see much ice time, but you could see when you're building a championship, things like that go by the wayside.
Looks like another signing that comes in from Darren Dreger. Speaking of the Dominik Hasek, Brett Hull Red Wings, looks like Andrew Copp off the board. As Jay mentioned, that was kind of a possibility going into today. 5 years, $5.625 million a year.
I mean, the Red Wings have cash to burn, so
yeah. I was about to say for Detroit that's good. That's okay. That's serviceable.
Yeah. And like, free agency is all about overpaying anyway. Like, no one gets what they're worth on free agency. They get what they're worth, and then like an extra $1 million on top of that. So
yeah. You want to
back? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jess.
I was gonna say, think back to David Backes back in what was that, like 2015. Ended up with like 6-year, $5 million deal or vice versa, and did not age well at all.
If I'm going to be honest with you, as somebody who's seen a lot of Andrew Copp from, well, I mean, with the COVID years, the Edmonton Oilers played a lot of Winnipeg, and they also played them in the playoffs too, which I don't want to talk about. But he is a very effective guy. His stats the most presentable or the most pretty? Maybe not, but he is just a pain to play against. And on top of it, if you're going into the corner with him, he's going to find somebody who is open because he's occupying a lot of space. But then he can also tuck in the odd goal, as you can tell with, I mean, you take a look at his stats, 15 goals last season or the season before this one, 21 this season. So, and that's spread between both Winnipeg and New York. I think he's a very tough guy to play against, a guy that I would have loved a lot of teams to take a look at. Maybe not Detroit, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's definitely like Copp to Detroit. It's one of those when you read it go across the screen, you're like, that fits and that checks. And he's going to blend really well in Detroit with especially the youth that they got going there and what they're building going forward. You're like, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, Detroit might be a sneaky good team this season.
Yeah.
Like,
And I was going to
Atlantic
mention,
is going to be super interesting.
Yeah, and I was going to mention with the Red Wings, obviously they have, Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond up front. They got Mo Seider on the back end. Jakub Vrana, another really good offensive player. They seem like they have the skill guys. Now, a player like Copp would be a great fit because all of a sudden you're adding that next layer of what you need to be a competitive team. Like, you had the skill, now you're adding a little bit of the grit. And as we mentioned, Copp is still a guy who can add some offensive pop from that middle six. So if you use them right, there's a pretty solid depth signing for the Red Wings there.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of big bodies too. Is it Anthony Mantha that they are not? No, they just moved Mantha. I forget who it was.
They moved Mantha for Vrana, who Vrana is an
well,
absolute firecracker for them when he's been on the ice.
Absolutely great. I forget they have another big body. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yes, the youth as well. I mean, Lucas Raymond is an exciting name, an exciting player as well, and I mean, let's be real. Mo Seider, I mentioned Lucas Raymond. You said, I believe it was Jay who said that this is going to be a quietly good team. They started off quite strong at the start of the season. And I mean, whether or not they were winning games throughout the season, they were a tough opponent to play against. Dylan Larkin, everybody gives Dylan Larkin a little bit of slack for being maybe not the biggest guy, but I mean, let's be real. He as well plays like he is 6'5" sometimes. He's always in tough areas. He's hitting. He's obviously contributing as well. Put him next to an Andrew Copp, and that might be kind of scary.
And he can probably play in Canada, unlike Tyler Bertuzzi. So there's step one.
That's who I was thinking of.
That's
who I was thinking of was Bertuzzi. Yeah, that's why I couldn't remember him, because he didn't play in Canada.
Yeah. Dear God. It's funny because I'm looking through Twitter right now and I'm seeing a lot of Preds fans quote tweet the deals for both Trojek and Copp, and it's like, oh dear God, I'm glad we weren't in on that. But being the Predators, it'll probably be like $7 million for Burakovsky or something like that. I mean, they just brought in Ryan McDonough, who has 4 years and $6 million per year left. So I have a feeling that cap space is going to go away very, very soon. While we're waiting for more big signings to come in, let's talk about some of the guys still in the market. We talked about Johnny Hockey. Sorry again, Jess. Another big guy, maybe the next biggest guy in the market, is Nazem Kadri. Kyle, we know we talked a little bit about Avalanche maybe not being able to bring him back, or transitioning to some other guys. Where do you guys think is a good fit for Nazem Kadri?
Other than Colorado, I've heard.
I mean, I would have him on the Blue Jackets in a second, but
I honestly
know that.
I honestly thought, like, if the Johnny Hockey thing falls through in Philly, Naz is going to Philly.
I thought you were going to say Calgary, and I was going to say no. We don't need to see him.
Come here, that's fine.
Because it honestly, like, with Naz's contract, and let's be real here, like, he had the best year of his life last year with the Colorado Avalanche. Like, I could have my best year of my life with the Colorado Avalanche if you put me on the ice. Like, it's not that hard. So his numbers are going to be a little inflated. And that means, and carrying a ring into free agency, you're going to get overpaid. So if you're not getting Johnny Hockey, your reaction is next best. And that's going to be Naz. And you're going to pay what you would pay for Johnny Hockey. I wouldn't be surprised if he lands in the 7 to 9. A 10 would not surprise me either. It's just you're going to overpay, and that's what you feel like is going to happen. If it does look like Johnny Hockey's going to New Jersey instead of Philly, then Philly is going to get Nas and overpay him, and then that contract is going to be one of those talking points 3 or 4 years down the road that Philly can't do anything because they're carrying this burden of a contract, and Nas can only give you 20 games a year.
Here's an option for you for Nazem Kadri. The Anaheim Ducks have a bajillion dollars of cap space, and I think that putting Nas with Trevor Zegras would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's going to
right.
I don't hate it.
It makes a lot of sense. It really does. And then you have that revenge tour almost for, hey, I won you a cup and you did not pay me. Well,
now I'm going to score it. Yeah, now I'm going to score a hat trick on you. I love a revenge game, but
you thought that 90-point season was just a one-off. Well, watch me put up 100 with Trevor on my line. How about that?
That's a really good one there, Jay.
Yeah. Jess, you brought it up kind of in jest, but Nazem Kadri to Calgary, not exactly a bad call either.
No, I think that would be probably, second best to losing Johnny. Putting him on a line with Elias Lindholm and Matthew Tkachuk would be, again, an easy setup for success. And it wouldn't be the worst spot for him. And it certainly wouldn't put the Flames in a position where I think a lot of people think they're at right now, where it's back at the bottom of the barrel and fighting for their lives, because the Flames have never done a full rebuild and they will never do a full rebuild. So, if you have to go out there and overpay for a free agent and you're not losing any assets, why not do it? I said between Kadri and Forsberg, if that deal didn't get done, you get one of those two. But now that Naz is on the market still, just come home to Canada. Why not?
Well, and not to be the homer that I clearly am with all of my Oilers jersey and gear on today, but Edmonton is a tough team to play against. And I mean, you're not constructing your team if you're the Calgary Flames to always play against the Edmonton Oilers, because that's not realistic. But I mean, there's a very strong possibility that we do see an Oilers Flames Battle of Alberta playoff again if the Flames do recoup some pieces. So Nazem Kadri, I mean, we saw what Nazem Kadri could do in the 3 games, and I say 3 games because Evander Kane did have that very, very brutal hit and dirty hit on Nazem Kadri in the playoffs there. But you could see what he does. And even though that he was taken out of that series, it's not because of what he did. The guys go hard against Nazem Kadri because he gets under their skin. And who better to do that against than the team who is down the highway from you? And there's constantly are we better than Edmonton, or are we better than Calgary? And, so, hey, a guy that you can easily go, oh, okay, well, they got Evander Kane, we can bring in Nazem Kadri. Here's a little tit for tat.
Yeah, if you're an Oilers fan, Brett, and all of a sudden you are playing a team that has both Matthew Tkachuk, Nazem Kadri, and Milan Lucic on there, how often do you just throw the remote control at your team watching these games from home?
Let me tell you right now, TD Force, the Oilers trainer, is going to have a lot of ice packs as well. If they bring, just so much yelling. I mean, yes, the Edmonton Oilers only have right now Evander Kane to combat that potential 3-headed monster of Matthew Tkachuk, Nazem Kadri, and Milan Lucic. The Edmonton Oilers can't afford to have a guy like Darnell Nurse off the ice for 5 minutes for a fight or for whatever that may be. The guys that the Edmonton Oilers have that have grit to them also have skill and are valuable to them. They don't have an answer to that if that is a reality for them.
Yeah. More signings. It looks like the Chicago Blackhawks whatever they're doing this offseason. Andreas
actively
Athanasiou,
making themselves worse.
Yes. Speaking of actively making themselves worse,
They're
Max
doing it on
Domi
purpose.
So Andreas Athanasiou and Max Domi to Chicago. Domi was kind of an interesting one. Kind of forgot Andreas Athanasiou existed, to be completely honest. Even though he was a 30-point or 30 goal scorer for one of my teams. Chicago is kind of an interesting bag because, it seems like with the Alex DeBrincat trade, they made a trade just to make a trade. We knew they kind of wanted him on the block because he was one of their bigger pieces, but it seems like they probably maybe could have gotten more from a team out there. I'm not sure how much leverage they had. Kirby Dach, I thought that was kind of an actually good trade for them because Kirby Dach hasn't hit his potential yet. It's clear what the Chicago Blackhawks are doing. They're not trying to be competitive at all next season. They're going to try to get Connor Bedard. They're trying to get as low as possible, as cheap as possible for the next couple of years to try to rack up as many up-and-coming players as possible. What do you guys think of, I guess, the concept of blatantly tanking as much as the Blackhawks are doing? Because, if you become the Colorado Avalanche, if you become the Tampa Bay Lightning, sure, like maybe 10, 15 years from now it works out. But, if you're a fan, is that fun to sit through for 10 years hoping that maybe something could happen?
No, I guess it's only fun if no, there's no fun to it. There's no silver lining besides the tickets to the games. But then who are you going to see? A bunch of small children on the ice that don't really like. It's clear that Chicago has player development issues, but I don't think tanking is the right idea. If you don't make I look at San Jose, right? And think about how they're not actively making moves to make themselves worse. It's not as obvious. With Chicago, it's right in your face in red ink, underlined a million times.
Yeah. Well, and what San Jose is doing too is they have trouble kind of rebuilding right now because they're stuck with that Brent Burns contract, although it sounds like he may be traded by the end of the day. We'll talk about that in a second. They're also stuck with the Erik Karlsson contract, some big money deals that they can't really move right now. Chicago is, on the other hand, their top player, Patrick Kane, is still very much an elite player. It's weird. I've gone through this in the comment section with some Preds fans because a lot of Preds fans want a full tear it down rebuild. And I think it's sort of this weird, NHL EA sports culture where everybody picks GM mode for the worst team, gets the number one pick and has fun just building this monster team. And it's a little bit far from reality. There's for every Colorado or Tampa Bay, there's, the Buffalo Sabres, there's the Edmonton Oilers who, they got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That's great. Nobody talks about the 10 years prior where they were rolling with Nail Yakupov as a number one pick. Or, I know he's your guy, Brett. So it just seems like there's sort of this romantic view of a full rebuild that's we're going to suck for 2-3 years. And then in 5 years, we're going to be a dynasty. And that's not always how it works out. It is very hit or miss. And I think that's something a lot of fans don't get. And I think there's a lot of maybe people excited to see what the Blackhawks do. They're already buying their Bedard jerseys and they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to get back to the promised land in 5 years. This, you look back at 2017, that could be the Blackhawks last time they were good for, who knows, well until 2030.
Well, there's speaking of Edmonton, and yes, those 10 years were difficult. In fact, Jess and I talked about it earlier, but it was dubbed the decade of darkness. So you can tell just how great it was here. And it's not fun, like we mentioned, being in a rebuild. But here locally, we have a soccer team called FC Edmonton, and they're not that great either. They have been dubbed FC Opportunity. And that's what I kind of see a little bit in Chicago. You take a look at their depth chart, and it's basically Patrick Kane, Seth Jones, and fill in the blanks. Anybody can come in here, Max Domi and Andreas Athanasiou, and can go out there, get valuable minutes and try and, it's an opportunity. You can get into another team. You can get back into your form. Are you going to make the playoffs? Maybe, probably not. But you get the opportunity to develop yourself even more in the NHL, which is not exactly the worst thing ever. And you get better. That's what I really see out of Chicago coming up here.
Yeah. I want to just to get back to the concept of tanking for the fans. Mark Lazarus of The Athletic had a really good article on how bad tanking is. And he talked a lot about, okay, fine. You want to tank, you want to go get Bedard, fine. If you want to suck for the next 3 years, that's fine. But don't expect the fans to stick around and watch terrible hockey. Don't expect the fans to pay $100 to sit in the nosebleeds at the United Center to watch Patrick Kane and 11 pylons play. And I think I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about tanking as a strategy to get better. But I think, like you said, Nick, it's not. I think a lot of people think it's a kind of a fill in the blanks of, okay, team will be bad for X years. Now we will be good for X years because, you pick Connor Bedard or whatever. The Blackhawks right now are not a Connor Bedard away from being a good team. And even so, I think Jess said, they've clearly got player development problems. Obviously, they had to clean house after the lawsuit all came out. I don't know about the new coach, the new GM. It's all kind of a big question mark. Chicago could come out of this in 5 years and be a really good team. Or this could be, again, I'm sorry to bring up the Edmonton Oilers, Brett, but this Connor Bedard could be Taylor Hall. Sam Gagner was supposed to be the savior of Edmonton. And then Taylor Hall was supposed to be the savior of Edmonton. And then Nail Yakupov was supposed to be the savior of Edmonton. And, it's a first overall pick is not necessarily the way to say. I think a lot of people watch the way that it happened with Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh was on the brink of being sent to Kansas City. And then they drafted Sidney Crosby, and that the year before that, they drafted Yevgeny Malkin. The year before that, they drafted Marc-Andre Fleury. They got lucky as well, but they got those 3 very good players. And I think a lot of people are like, well, all we have to do is do what Pittsburgh did 20 years ago and be really, really bad for a season and then luck into these 3 top 2 picks and then go from there. But it's not really how anything works in this sport anymore. It's a very different kind of league. And I think what's way more likely to happen is, Connor Bedard could be a game breaker in the NHL, but I think he's probably going to go the McDavid route of being an insane world-class player, but having basically no other support. Because I don't believe that Chicago has the infrastructure to develop a good team.
Yeah, at least not for quite some time, I would say. Looks like a big trade. We kind of hinted about it earlier. Brent Burns, speaking of big San Jose prospects, going to the Carolina Hurricanes. Interesting. Looks like him, Lane Peterson. The other way, Steven Lorentz, a goalie prospect, and a conditional 3rd-round pick next year. Sharks retaining 33% of Burns' salary. That's all according to Pierre LeBrun. Sharks, it looks like kickstarting the rebuild. Carolina getting Brent Burns, kind of an interesting play for them.
I mean, they're just replacing Tony DeAngelo with older Tony DeAngelo.
older Tony DeAngelo.
He's making $8 million
Tony
in 3 years.
And that's what confuses me. And sorry about dropping out. The joy of being a single parent on free agency day. With Carolina and how they ran out of gas in the playoffs last year, what sense does this make to acquire Brent Burns? How is that going to help what Carolina is trying to put together? Are they abandoning the push that they were making in the playoffs and continuing to get better? I don't see how Brent Burns, other than a veteran presence, but I don't know if Carolina really needs that, especially under Rod Brindamore, who's about as veteran as you can get, who can give you all the insight you need. Like, I'm trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish here, because Carolina needs to get younger and have more gas in the tank for these longer Eastern Conference playoffs games. So I'm kind of trying to figure out, is this the first move of many? Are they trying to get value for the trade deadline and have a chip to kind of auction off a little bit later? This move is out of all of, without Chicago, of course, but this move is the most head-scratching so far of the day.
See, I mean, Carolina, you have a very solid point to that, to be honest with you guys. That was something I really haven't thought of. My first thing was to take a look at their defensive core, and now they have Jakob Slavin, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, and Brent Burns. A lot of B's in that, and a lot of BRs, to be honest with you.
Ethan Bear.
And Ethan Bear, yeah. Woo.
He's in the trap.
But yes, those are I would say a very solid top four. But like you said, he's not exactly the spryest of chickens. It's the second time I've said that today. But they do have $19 million in cap space. There's a lot of moves to be made, obviously, all around. Brent Burns, not exactly the youngest guy, but can they find somewhere else to maybe get younger or get, I guess, maybe longer in the tooth, as you referred to? They were undefeated at home until they got eliminated, right? They did not have anything to kind of go off of and really build off of in terms of momentum or anything like that at the end of the season, and when they got eliminated. Brent Burns has been a guy who hasn't exactly been the healthiest, or really potentially probably doesn't have his legs under him. So yeah, you know what? I liked it initially, but yeah, you may have talked me out of it.
It feels a little bit like the Duncan Keith trade of last season. It feels, and I never really think about Carolina as a young team, but they kind of are. And it feels like that, like, well, we have a pretty solid core. Let's bring in an old veteran to kind of play. I was talking to JD Young of Locked On Sharks about this earlier, actually. Brent Burns, if you have him playing like limited minutes, you don't have him playing 28 minutes or however long he was playing on the Sharks every night, he's probably a pretty good asset. Yes, it's a lot of money, but it feels like Carolina was the right landing place for him. They have the space for him. He's going to play limited minutes. Jakob Slavin is so good defensively that Tony DeAngelo didn't have to play a single defense last season. So maybe they stick those two guys together and hope that Jakob Slavin is good enough that they can just kind of let Brent Burns do the Brent Burns rover. I'm going to skate all over the ice and play forward, essentially. And that could be a real success for Carolina, which I hate. But
I mean, it seems like it's a classic case of asset management. Like, yeah, he was the number 1D in San Jose, a guy that was playing 20 minutes a night. You know what you're going to get in him. He's very good offensively. He's still got some offensive pump. He's not the same guy he was defensively, 5 or 6 years ago. And he really never really was like that top high-end defenseman, stay-at-home defenseman either. But, you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, who won a Stanley Cup with Luke Shen on their blue line, and Zach Bogosian, two guys like a lot of people, especially in the analytics community, said, do not touch, do not have them anywhere near your lineup. And then you look, Kyle can attest to this, you had Jack Johnson, another one of those guys where you're like, dear God, please keep him away from the team. He played a big role for the Avalanche. So it's almost like it's asset management. And look, you know, Carolina does have some good defensemen on their team. Jacob Slavin, I think, is maybe one of the most underrated defensemen in the entire NHL. Brady Shea is another really good defensive guy. Maybe you bring in somebody like Brent Burns to excel on the offensive side, maybe add some jump while they're out there, knowing that you can have a guy like Jacob Slavin, like Brady Shea, kind of be the anchor, maybe the eraser if Burns gets caught out of position or, you know, tries too hard in the offensive end and gets caught. Maybe that's, you know, how they do. I think there is sort of this weird, I guess sentiment is the right word sometimes, where, you know, if a player has like bad stats or bad metrics, that he's automatically a bad player. You have to look at how he's being used, how his team is using them, and then you have to look at his skill set and see, okay, he's clearly not in the right situation where he's at now. Can we add him to our team in a different way and he provides some value? Maybe that's what Carolina sees in Brent Burns right now.
And like the thing I'm afraid of with Carolina, you saw it last year when the injury bug started biting Carolina in the playoffs. And that young team, like Jay mentioned, like once they felt the pressure of the series, how they kind of crumbled. And now you acquire Burns and you're going to try and build something off of him and his contributions and his experience. What happens when that goes away too? Are they enough to be self-reliant without him? Because he's not going to give you 82 games. And like you mentioned Jack Johnson, Nick, like he scored the first goal for the Avalanche and then you didn't see him again until the playoffs. Like his contributions just weren't there. And can Carolina justify making this move and paying the money for somebody just to teach? Because I thought that's Brendamore's role.
That's true. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Looks like another big signing, the crown jewel of last year's trade deadline, the guy everybody was crawling over themselves to get, Ben Sherratt, of course, is who I'm talking about. According to Elliot Friedman, he is apparently close to signing with the Red Wings. And also, speaking of the Red Wings, apparently they have also signed Ollie Mata. So, you know, if there was any other team other than Steve Yzerman, I would be like, what in God's name are you doing?
Yeah, what does Stevie Y know?
Yeah,
What does he know?
because of Steve Yzerman, I'm like, oh God, what are we missing about Ollie Mata and Ben Sherratt? What are we missing? Have they been good players this whole time?
Yeah. I wonder if it comes back to what you were saying about, you know, how they're being utilized and who they're playing around, but I'm not going to put too much weight into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're also sitting there with $23 million in cap space, so they kind of can just sit there and go, you get money, you get money, you get money. They kind of have, plus they have a lot of young players who are under, as we've gone through, who are under that a little bit of an ELC or kind of a bridge deal as well. Again, I'm going to take a look at their decor, and you got a Philip Hronek, who I think is underappreciated from around the league as well. You can do a lot of things well. Moritz Seider as well, another guy there. But then after that, Jake Wallman, again, an Ollie Mata, Edmonton Oiler legend, Jordan Osterley. They got a little bit to do here. So you know what? Hey, Ben Sherratt, for as much as the analytics and people like to get on to him for a number of things, I understand, but he's still a very viable option. Ollie Mata, another guy who had a very strong season a relatively strong season last season.
Better than I think people realized.
Yes, 100%. And I think it's again one of those under the radars, like you said. It's Steve Yzerman. He knows what he's talking about. I mean, they got a strong front office there, so maybe we're the ones caught in the quiet here.
Yeah, something about the moves that Detroit and Ottawa have made today. It's one of those that you kind of step back and you're like, what are they building here? What's going on over here that we're not understanding? They're making moves that are kind of head scratching, but they are operating under the pretenses that they know how they're going to utilize these members in their lineup. And I'm extremely interested to see what the first 10 to 15 games for Ottawa and Detroit look like after both of these teams go through a training camp with all these acquisitions, what these two teams look like. Because before the year, nobody's talking about Ottawa and Detroit, but now you are.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing for Detroit, too, is I know they have a lot of cap space, but they also have some big holes beyond this year. The biggest one, Dylan Larkin, is going to be an unrestricted free agent. And the Red Wings are going to have to do whatever they can to get him locked up. And he's somebody who's probably going to demand a big chunk of change. And then they also have guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, who's due a new contract. He'll be an unrestricted free agent. You got Alex Nedeljkovic is going to need a new deal after next year. He's an unrestricted free agent. So you're probably going to have to save a big chunk of change to make some decisions on this guy. So if you're a team like Detroit, maybe you don't want to swing for the fences and get somebody like Johnny Gaudreau right now. Like maybe you don't want to hit a home run. Maybe you want to address the depth and then see, maybe once you get those guys locked up, you get everybody locked in. Then maybe you can kind of see where you're at cap wise, and then maybe you can be more aggressive in years to come. Because as we've seen, the flat cap this year has kind of thrown a wrench into things. We anticipate not a big rise in cap for the next 2 years while the NHL kind of recoups the COVID stoppage situation. So there's going to be situations where teams are either going to need to sell good players or they're not going to be able to afford to keep some of their restricted free or unrestricted free agents. So definitely don't hate the wait and see approach from Steve Yzerman there.
No, I 100% agree. Excuse me. I mean, hey, I'm somebody who's quite familiar with a Ken Holland type of regime, and that's kind of similar to maybe not similar to what Steve Yzerman will do, but you kind of see he's kind of picking up the pieces of the Ken Holland kind of deal, right? So I think there's a few of the people sitting there going, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for Steve Yzerman that the last regime kind of left the Detroit Red Wings in kind of shambles almost, and have led to people like Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider to be selected. So now it's time to recoup those as well.
Yeah, like Detroit has been in this weird kind of decade-long rebuild. Like it's felt like a slow simmering just rumble where you keep expecting like this move to be made or this push in the standings and they just never get there. And with the acquisitions they made today, you feel like Yzerman is kind of putting the best foot forward and seeing what sticks. Like if we're going to commit to this rebuild like we have been, what pieces are actually working here? Like you mentioned Larkin's contract coming up, like he's been there. Is this a piece that is working or not working? Like this is the time to figure it out because you've been hearing every year in, year out, Detroit's working on something, they're building. Just wait for Detroit to put something together, and nothing has come of it. I feel like this is Detroit's best push at, okay, this is what we've committed to. Let's see if it works. Because when Larkin's contract comes up, is this something we need to commit to, or do we need to look elsewhere for this rebuild? Because something's not working, because we've been devoting the time and resources to this, and we're not seeing any results.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some good pieces. Obviously, the Anthony Mantha for Jakub Vrana trade was fantastic. They hit home runs in the draft with Lucas Raymond and Mo Sider. It sounds like Simone Edvinsson, who was their first-round pick 2 years ago, is going to come to North America this year. He's another one that has been very highly ranked, one of the best players in Sweden last year, best young players. So they got pieces. You just got to figure out if if it works, if they can put them all together, because if not, there's definitely going to have to be some changes in Detroit. Johnny Gaudreau update. Seen a couple of tweets that say Philadelphia is out on Gaudreau. So
I'll take it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that from like any of the big players yet, but a couple of regional guys that cover the Flyers. So it sounds like New Jersey and the New York Islanders, for whatever reason, might be the main teams in the mix. I would say between those two, you'd want to go to New Jersey, right? Like they're the ones with like at least some sentiment of a future.
I think New Jersey would absolutely. They need Johnny Hockey for something to talk about in New Jersey. Like, this is something to light a fire. Like, other than the draft, you don't hear about New Jersey.
No.
Yeah.
And
so this would be one of the no. I was just saying this would be one of those, like, if you go to the island, you just go to the island and you get forgotten about. New Jersey, they build around you. This will be the biggest thing they've had since Taylor Hall.
Yeah, and plus, don't forget, Gadreau played with Dougie Hamilton when they were in Calgary together. So I think they already have like that kind of chemistry and connection there, and it would be interesting to see how. I don't want to see him go to the Devils just because the state of New Jersey is just. Sorry, but it's trash. I hate the Jersey Turnpike.
Wow.
That's my own personal beef with the state. But I think you're right. I think that is what the team and the organization need. I think it would be would launch their rebuild ahead, like catapult them. And like you said, it'd be the biggest thing since Taylor Hall. And I don't know. I think it would be a great opportunity, and it would look great for the Devils organization and put butts in the seats.
And especially coming out of Calgary, where he wanted to feel like the number one. He wanted to feel like the franchise. Like, Calgary even gave him a really good contract offer, and he just never felt like Calgary believed in him. It was just do what you're asked to do. We're not going to invest a lot in you. We're not going to certainly build around you. New Jersey can give him that feeling where he could come in and be the superstar and be on the billboards and be loved by the front office and the fan base. So that just feels like it'll work, especially what he came from.
Yeah, it's not like he's going to play with scraps either, and he's the guy that has to carry the team. You're going to have Jack Hughes on probably the other side of you, and Nico Hischier right down the middle, and some pretty decent up and coming guys on the middle. We know they got Nemec in the draft. He looks like a surefire guy to build
Mercer
around. Yeah, Dougie Hamilton is there. I mean, it's not like there's like this barren wasteland in New Jersey, and you have to do what Taylor Hall did a couple of years ago, which was kind of will this team on your own to the promised land. You have some pieces to work with if you're Johnny Gaudreau and you go to the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, and he gets what he wants, especially being that number one guy, and he's not living in the shadow of someone like he was in Calgary under Matthew Tkachuk, even though John was there longer. I think it's going to be, if that is where he lands, it will be an interesting fit. I think it's a young locker room. It's not super young, but it does have, he will have a voice and will be considered a leader and just someone to look up to for these younger guys.
A couple of other signings coming in. Of course, we'll get you caught up on all of them. Brett, here's one for you. It sounds like the Oilers bringing back Brett Kulak. 4 years, 2.75 AAV. Was that a sigh of relief or was that a sigh of dear God?
A sigh of relief, a huge monkey off of our back. Because honestly, once the news came out, and again, sorry for ditching out real quick. The power is apparently shoddy around our place, so I apologize for that. But yes, Brett Kulak. As soon as it came out that he was going to potentially test free agency, it kind of sent a lot of oil country into not necessarily a frenzy, but people are going, this was the Oilers' most solid defenseman in the playoffs. And really, ever since the Oilers traded for him at the trade deadline, he's a local boy. When he got traded to the Oilers, he got on the phone with his dad, who happened to be out on the tractor of their farm, which can't get any more Albertan than it is already. And they sat there and they cried because he was so proud that finally he gets to be an Edmonton Oiler and he got to be a Calgary Flames, so on the wrong side of the Battle of Alberta, but he was proud to be an Edmonton Oiler, and he came out and everybody loves Brett Kulak. Everybody loves Brett Kulak. And as soon as he tested that market, everyone was going, what are the Oilers going to do? Now they get to retain him, who's not only a defensive, just stable guy in the back end, but he also had a fluid skater. He can move the puck forward. He can score as well. I mean, he is a sneaky shot, and he's able to, well, if a guy like Evan Bouchard wants to play kind of that rover role, is more than willing and really likes to sit back and will be a stable rock really for the Oilers there. I think that's just a massive retain for the Edmonton Oilers and Ken Holland. The Edmonton Oilers are really starting to stack up here. Plus, it's only 2.75 AAV. That I'd put that as a massive W for the Oilers here.
Yeah, he was a guy that I thought when his name came up, I thought he would be perfect for the Nashville Predators, just because I thought they could have really used his depth on the blue line. They decided to go the Jeremy Lauzon route, which, whatever. Yeah. Jess, according to Michael Russo, Trevor Lewis likely going back to Calgary. I don't know. Don't ask me.
Be a nice guy who tries hard, Jess.
Yeah, I'm tired of it.
I love Trevor Lewis. I won't apologize.
He's a nice guy. He's a great guy, but I'm tired of this. Men at the tail end of their career coming in from Daryl Sutter's old teams. I think there's a much more effective way to run a team than whatever is happening now. But, just stop taking penalties and then maybe we can be on nicer terms.
But he's won 2 cups. That is the biggest thing. When it comes to NHL moves, if you've won a cup, that means you know how to win, whatever that means. Because I assume, like, based on that, like you know how to win, I just assume that means nobody else knows how to win.
You just qualified Ondrej Burakovsky and Darren Helm in that same sentence.
Yeah. Maybe you just go out there. Maybe that was the Flames' problem. Like, Matthew Tkachuk went out there and was like, shoot, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
Why hasn't anybody with a cup come here and told me what we're supposed to do against the Edmonton Oilers?
Right. It is what it is. I think that they know that they're in this weird position right now, especially with Johnny leaving, potentially a trade request from Tkachuk. Who knows? I'm just very tired of these bottom 6. Do nothings.
No word on salary or anything like that, but we'll have to wait and see. We do have a big signing, not a UFA, but a big RFA, Mikhail Sergachev. 8-year extension with the Lightning, $8.5 million AAV. No rumbling there, but that's a big contract for Sergachev, who basically is kind of evolved into the Lightning's number 2 D-man behind Victor Hedman.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most stable. I love Mikhail Sergachev. I mean, he's a pain to play against, and those are my type of guys. The guys who can do it all. You can chip in offensively, can move the puck transitionally, can play very strong in your own end, and can be chippy as well. Yes, I just explained players that I like, but I also just explained Mikhail Sergachev as well. Very well-rounded skater, well-rounded defenseman. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I'll use my Oilers flex here, but no, it's not a flex in this situation. $8.5 million he's making less than Darnell Nurse. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys who are getting very, very. I mean, $8.5 million is a lot per year, but for a guy who has won numerous Stanley Cups, is a top end defenseman. That's I genuinely I think that's a steal, and a guy who will be a stable defenseman throughout the rest of his career, hopefully, barring any injuries, I guess. So knock on wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely don't feel like with Sergachev going back to the Lightning, like you definitely feel like that window is not closed for Tampa Bay, even with those aging contracts and aging players. Like he's definitely he's worth every penny. There's not a lot of negatives you can say about that, and you can't really complain about the AAV because I don't think Tampa Bay believes in the salary cap anyway.
I was just going to say, where are they getting this money from? Like, I don't know what their cap looks like, but I feel like they're just pulling money, like they're printing money. Yeah. And that's why inflation is happening. But no one's like secret. No one
Tampa Bay Lightning or the downturn of this economy.
For legal reasons, that is a joke. Please don't sue me.
Every time you're filling up your gas tank for $5 a gallon, thank Julien Brisebois.
Yeah. Julian!
That's the JB that was all over gas pumps. It's making so much more sense. Guys, we figured it out. And Tampa just signed Anthony Cirelli.
You fill up your gas tank, and John Cooper just turns his thermostat in his house down just a little bit more and smiles.
Yeah. And the whole time he's doing this.
We figured it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jess, you've got a good point here. I mean, where are they getting the cap space again? I have Cap Friendly up on here. They have.
Can I butt in real quick?
Yeah,
to add to this. Jeff Merrick just said Anthony Cirelli just signed an 8-year extension worth 6.25 AAV.
What? Are these Monopoly cash deals?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. They're getting a house on the side too, and a little bit of this. I mean, they're $6 million over the salary cap right now, and I don't even think Cap Friendly has registered the Sergachev signing, let alone now the Cirelli signing. So where's your LTIR? They don't even have. They have one guy on LTIR, and that's Brent
Seabrook contract. Yeah.
Well, they're just gonna take someone's leg out, like Tanya Harding.
Yeah. That's exactly. Yeah. You're waiting for like the second Alex Killorn gets like a sprained wrist, and then the doctor's gonna be like, oh man, that's gonna cost you out until probably mid-April.
Yeah.
It's like, but I feel fine. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
I love how all these deals have been done today, and we're all trying to rationalize how you're going to get things done. But it seems like Vegas and Tampa Bay just do whatever they want, and somehow things happen. It's absolutely mind blowing how Tampa and Vegas can handle the cap the way they do. But it seems like Colorado have to let like Nas walk because there's just no way to put this team back together and then take on another beefy contract.
Yeah.
And isn't Vegas like $6 million over the cap? How?
It says 2 right now. Sorry.
Okay, 2. So that's a lot better than what it looked like earlier. How are they going to announce Riley Smith and another extension? I feel like if you're in negative cap space, you need to figure that out first.
Yeah.
They also still need to re-sign Keegan Colasar, who is like kind of evolved into like a top 9 guy last year. So no idea where this cap space is going to come from if you're Vegas. I guess in Tampa's defense, these are contracts that don't take effect until next season, not this coming season, but the season after. And they do have, to be fair, a lot of contracts coming off the books then. So
That is true.
Would the Brent Seabrook also be coming off, I believe, next year, if I'm not mistaken?
I think he's got one more
Brent
year.
Seabrook is there for
One-
2 more years.
Two more, okay.
2 more years.
Yeah, so this season and next, and then the Seabrook contract is done.
That was a nasty one from the get-go.
Yeah. So we've heard from we've heard some big news from most of our teams today. Jay, it feels like the Blue Jackets are the one exception. We didn't expect them to be major players today, but they are in an interesting spot. Seem to be sort of in a rebuild with some competitive pieces in play. Where do you think the Blue Jackets are right now in terms of maybe building towards a contendership? And what are some moves you could see them make throughout the course of this offseason?
I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier on in the live show. I still think they need a top 6 center. Obviously, the Line A contract needs sorting out. I have every confidence that Kekalainen and Line A will be able to sort out a contract. Both sides want long term, so I think we're probably going to see Line A get maybe 8 or 9 million for the next 6 years, which I'm absolutely fine with. They're a weird team. They're a weird team. The thing about the Blue Jackets is every time I expect them to be good, they're bad, and every time I expect them to be bad, they're good. So going into last season, I was like, man, this team probably not going to be excuse me. This team's probably not going to be as bad as everyone says that they are, but I still don't think they're going to be good. And then they fell off towards the end because of injuries and everything, but they were a perfectly acceptable team for the bulk of the season. I could see them maybe making a push for the playoffs next season, depending on how this free agency goes. I don't think they're like 1 or 2 guys away from being the Avalanche, but I think they're definitely heading in the right direction. I've been really happy with this draft, with last year's draft. Obviously, Cole Sillinger came in, made an impact right away. Kent Johnson is going to be really good. David Jiricek is probably going to be in the NHL this October. So it's all looking good. I think a lot of people panicked when Seth Jones left and assumed that he was the only thing holding this team together, but we did just fine without Seth Jones.
It's a hell of a trade for you guys, didn't it?
4 first-round picks for Seth Jones, essentially.
Yeah. Worked out already.
The Blue Jackets to me feel like they remind me of watching the Predators from like the late 2000s to early like 2010s, where you like watch the roster and you're like, God, this team is trash. And then all of a sudden somebody comes out of nowhere. Pekka Rinne emerges and becomes an all-timer. Shea Weber puts up like a Norris caliber season again and again and again. And all of a sudden you have like a terrible team on paper all of a sudden looking like they could be a contender, like in some cases, scaring teams like the prime early 2000s Blackhawks in the series every year. So it just seems like, Columbus is always that team that's built to be good in spite of not necessarily having the best roster.
The Blue Jackets play best with a chip on their shoulder. They love spite. A lot of and I think that's why Patrick Laine has fit in so well, because a lot of people assumed he was a bust, and now he's like, no, I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to score like 18 goals in 19 games or whatever. It's like I say, it could really go either way. And I was talking to our the producer of the show before we kind of went live. Like, the Blue Jackets could do nothing today, or they could go out and get Gadreau, and I have absolutely no idea which one it's going to be. Yeah. Jarmo Kekalainen is just unleakable. Like, you get nothing from Kekalainen that he doesn't want you to know. So we'll see. It could be that they make a big splash. It could be that they don't. I know Kekalainen doesn't typically like to spend a lot of money in free agency. He doesn't like to make a big splash at the trade deadline. He likes to grow the team during the draft, and I think he's done a pretty good job of that. But yeah, I would like a top 6 center, whether that, I mean, Trojek and Copp are off the board now, whether that's Dylan Strome, whether that's someone else, whether they lose their minds and go after Nazem Kadri, like, who knows? But the Blue Jackets are going to do what Jarmo Kekalainen wants to do, and that tends to be different from what most other GMs want to do, which is kind of fun to cover.
Well, hey, a sense of Tampa Bay Lightning maybe being in some cap trouble right now. I'm just kidding. They just signed Eric Chernak now for an 8-year extension.
8 years?
8 years, $5.2 million AAV for
That's
Eric Chernak.
3 8-year deals.
That to me
Someone
seems like the one that you would question.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the big question mark there, and that's the one that's going to have everyone kind of turning their heads like, what are you doing? 8 years is a lot, but also $5.2 million for him.
Yeah.
Again, happy payday to everyone.
Well, and I was taking a look at this over the last segment here, but I was wondering why and how they are signing all of these guys. Well, they still have a year left on their contract, so the contracts that they're signing, they're all extensions, and this year or this coming year, they have a much, much lower AAV. So, yes, they are currently sitting $6 million above the cap right now, but all those contracts come into effect next year. And that is when right now, currently, they have $9 million in cap space next year. I mean, 8.5 of that is covered in the Sergachev signing alone. But I mean, they're obviously backloading some of their next contracts. Well, kind of just in regards to the salary cap right now, and especially up against their salary cap issues. They're signing for the future, it seems like. So maybe Brisebois is a couple of steps ahead of us again, but still, I mean, $9 million in cap space, or 9.7, excuse me, in cap space for this Tampa Bay Lightning, next year. I still don't see that being too much for them. I don't understand what they're doing.
You wonder if this is going to be the team to watch at the trade deadline, because you're going to see what absolutely is working and not, and they're going to be, with the anticipation of what next year is going to look like, that it's going to be a fire sale on Tampa Bay. And if you are one of those teams like maybe Columbus that's looking to make a push, an easy deal with Tampa Bay will put you right there.
Yeah. They have a couple of guys, including somebody that I want to talk to about it. Somebody I want to talk about. It's been a long day, guys. Talk about in a second. That's Ondrej Palat. I want to talk about some free agents that haven't been signed yet, maybe some middle of the pack guys. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on where they might end up, whether you think there will be good fits in any particular place. One of them is Ondrej Palat. We thought maybe going into the day that, the Lightning were clearing cap space to try to bring him back. We thought that was a big reason why they made the Ryan McDonagh to Nashville trade. But yeah, he's still out there. Seems like a really good middle six piece for a team that, maybe needs one or two more pieces to kind of get towards being a contender.
100%. I mean, Ondrej Palat is one of, I mean, we consistently say underappreciated today. That seems to be the theme. But I think Ondrej Palat is just one of those guys who goes out there and does the little things right, and he gets credited for it and rewarded for it is the right way to put it. And as you can see, I think Ondrej Palat is just a great addition for any team, but let's be real. Ondrej Palat, Stanley Cup winner, not bad.
I'm sorry, I've been laughing. laughing at this tweet. In 8 minutes, Tampa Bay just committed $159.6 million to their.
Oh my!
Man,
That's with those 3 8-year deals. All of those are 159.6 million.
What salary cap are they playing with?
yeah.
Like, what do they know something that we don't know? Like, I clearly, because right now the salary cap is what, 82 and a half. I mean, they're thinking that the salary cap is going to be like 100 next year. I don't get it.
What's the most money you guys have ever spent in 8 minutes?
Probably like a few hundred buying like concert tickets or something.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie,
hundreds of millions.
the team was literally lifting the cup, and I dropped about $250. Like everything that had Stanley Cup champions in the store, I'm just like adding to my cart, and I'm just on bliss, just ordering. I mean, 21 years is a long time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. I think I went a little crazy in the Nike store at the Grove this past Christmas, and I think I spent 600 Canadian or American. So that was quite an eye opener when I got home and took a look at the conversion there. But yeah, I think that was it.
I think one time, I in 2 o'clock in the morning one time drunkenly booked a $2,000 trip to Iceland.
That's incredible.
It wound up being like the most fun trip of my life, like fantastic trip. But yeah, maybe I'll like take a few shots of Fireball at 2 a.m. tonight, and I'll wake up and Nazem Kadri's a Nashville Predator or something like that.
Yeah, with your signature at the bottom.
Yeah, David Boyle's be like, you know what? I'm not really sure what happened. I just kind of woke up at 6 a.m. and it's like, look, some dude in Cincinnati, Ohio, brought in, it's all signed, delivered. He's doing this on the cheap.
That worked real great for the Peter Forsberg deal.
That's a dig.
Yeah. So interesting things happening around right now. Another one, and Kyle, I will talk to you about this. How about Ondrej Burakovsky, a guy who is kind of talked about as being maybe that next tier of scoring winger out there. I know when we chatted with you, we kind of had, you kind of had a little bit of a warning label on any team trying to sign Burakovsky.
Yeah, you have to understand. Yes, he has an incredible shot. Like he could snipe it when he believes it. He's got a little bit of the yips right now, and if you're going to sign him expecting a scoring threat, don't rely heavily on it. Let it be an accessory and something that can step up, but don't build something on top of that. Don't expect him to go out there and start scoring like crazy, because yes, he has incredible potential and a very high upside. His biggest enemy is himself, and he keeps getting in the way. Like something me and my co-host over on Locked On Avalanche, Chris, we talk about all the time is like, you can almost hear Burakovsky shoots it wide. Like you almost think that's his like additional last name. Like the man, like he can't hit the net, and he like had like coaching off the ice to try and like get him back into how to aim. Like it's concerning. Like yes, he's got all the outside of the world. Like he can, like you saw his playoff goal that he had. It was just it was unreal. But when he starts thinking about it, it just doesn't happen. So if he gets signed somewhere, you just have to come with the understanding it's going to take a little bit before he gets comfortable and he starts producing. It's not going to be a day one, like right out of the gate, tear your team up and put you on the score sheet.
Maybe his new contract includes a shooter tutor.
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah.
There it is.
I wonder if he just needs a good stern coach who has a system that he's never abandoned, and our good friend Daryl Sutter. Honestly, like at this point, I think anyone just will go to Daryl Sutter, like kind of like going to the farm upstate, but like you're not going there to die, you're going there to have a revival. And that's gonna be whoever the Flames sign as kind of their, you can't say replacement because that could be Naz. Naz could come in and be the replacement for John, but I would be almost certain that they sign a mid-tier, middle six sort of guy that they can bounce in between, who will eventually end up just seeing fourth line minutes because Daryl Sutter's a what have you done for me lately kind of guy. But I would really like to see them bring in someone, and even someone that could help elevate Dylan Dubé's game. So someone young but is still seasoned, and Burakovsky could be that guy. 2 cups. It's all about the cups, guys.
All about the cups. Yeah, got to teach Matthew Tkachuk how to win.
Yep.
Here's a name that is an interesting X factor, and I talked about that this morning on Locked On Predators podcast. This is somebody I want in Nashville. Has anybody talked about Phil Kessel as a short-term kind of option for a team?
Yeah,
it would be perfect. It would honestly be perfect for Nashville.
Yeah,
that would be really nice for Nashville.
I mean, you look, and I think he's not the player he once was, but you look at his stats. I mean, 50 points for a pretty bad Arizona team last year, and he didn't have a very good shooting percentage either, which makes you think maybe there's more to his game that would be there on a team that's not a dumpster fire of a franchise right now. And yeah, I mean, his defense isn't that great, but he still is one of the best skaters in the NHL, very strong at his feet, very good at kind of creating his own space, and just an absolutely deadly shot. So, if you're a team like the Nashville Predators, who actually does have a lot of, and my partner in crime, Ann Kimmel, just jumped in to echo the Kessel sentiment here in the live chat. But yeah, like if you put him in the right situation, pair him with maybe some good two-way players, that's a big offensive boost. And he's still, I think, got something left in the tank. I know from my point of view, the Predators were reportedly in on him at the trade deadline. I just couldn't really make a deal with Arizona work that made sense at the time. But he's somebody that I think can still help an NHL team searching for some depth scoring.
You want to talk about an NHL team searching for literally anything? How about Chicago? I know that's not really an appetizing spot right now, especially considering that they aren't going to be in contention. But let's be real, it's a low, not impact, but it's a low pressure type of place for Phil Kessel. He's never liked being in the spotlight. There's not a lot of pressure to go out there and perform right now, but he still can and can still do it with a guy like a Patrick Kane. So I mean, he's a guy who likes to just go out there and play, and I think that would be a very decent spot for him to go. I mean, yes, would it be nice for him to go to a contender? Yes, but I think for Phil Kessel, he's, again, a guy who's very nonchalant about things, and I think he just wants to go out there and go to a place that gives him the best opportunity to go and just play hockey and play the game that he enjoys and loves to play. I think Chicago might be a pretty decent spot for that.
Yeah, but he can help the Chicago Blackhawks, which means Chicago Blackhawks probably don't want anything to do with him next season.
True.
They got Max Domi. They don't need anything.
Yeah.
They're set. Yeah. This is the team they're rolling out with, guys.
Chicago's experiment is going to be something to look like, something really interesting to look back on in like 3 to 5 years to see, what have they accomplished since this rebuild? We don't really know what they're doing besides making their team actively worse sort of deal. And the thing is they still have Kane and Taves.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's really crazy to think about, like, how Chicago's gone from a team that you don't know what to do against them to you don't know what they're doing against themselves.
Yeah, I really expected this new GM to come in, and not that he was going to make everything, better overnight, but I thought that there was a clear direction that he wanted to take this team, and I think he's just kind of shaking a magic 8-ball to make his decisions, and that's his consultant.
Yeah. So they're clearly tanking for Connor Bedard. Is anybody else just want like Kevin Lankinen to go on some ungodly run this year? Kane scores like 130 out of spite, and all of a sudden the Chicago Blackhawks, with like the most obvious tank job ever, get into the playoffs and just ruin everything for tank for Connor Bedard crowd, and then promptly get bounced in the first round.
Yeah, and quick too, like 4 games.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
To Nashville.
Whoa. We have pieces.
Yeah.
Some other free agent signings and stuff that have popped up. Brendan Lemieux, who is not qualified as a restricted free agent for LA. He actually winds up going back to the Kings on a 1-year deal worth about $1.3 million. We mentioned Brett Kulak earlier. Frankie Vatrano going to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks on a 3-year deal worth about $3.5 million a year. Sure, why not?
Sure.
Vlad Nemestikov going back to Tampa Bay. That was, of course, the team that drafted him. He started his career there. He goes back on a 1-year deal. And Yaroslav Halak will go to the New York Rangers to back up Igor Shesterkin there, a 1-year deal from them. Any of those guys jump out to you?
For me,
feel
personally,
free to say no, but
personally, for me, it's Frankie Vatrano. I think if they lost Sonny Milano, I've always been a Sonny Milano guy. So I mean, we kind of share similar hair, so I have to be. But yeah, I like Sonny Milano, and I think them not tendering Milano and letting him go to as a UFA kind of left a not a great taste in my mouth. But I think Frankie Vatrano is a great replacement for him. Maybe not necessarily a direct replacement, but I think they play very similar types of games. It may be a small scale type of replacement, but either way, Sonny Milano was an important part to that Ducks team, I would say, despite the fact that they weren't the best team. I would still say that's a great replacement. Let's put in air quotes for that.
Another big deal, Kyle, this probably will interest you. Darcy Kuemper to the Washington Capitals on what looks like a 5-year deal. That was one that was kind of brought up in the rumor mill over the past couple of days. I mean, obviously it seemed like the Colorado Avalanche weren't going to be gung-ho on spending a lot of money for a goalie. We saw what happened with Philip Grubauer the other year. What do you think about Kuemper going to the Capitals, Kyle?
It's interesting, especially for what he's getting paid. You heard that this deal was going to be touching $6 million, and that was the impression when Georgiev came in here, that the Avs and Darcy Kuemper were on 2 different planets when it came to the deal. When you're seeing a 5-year, $26.25 million deal coming out to a 5.25 AAV, looks like there might be a little bit more to the 2 separate planets than just the money alone. When it came to, like, if on Locked On Avalanche, Chris was very big on Darcy Kuemper. I wore the black hat in this, and I was a Pavel Francouz fan. I felt like this was his time to be the starter, and never believed in Darcy Kuemper as a whole. He came back from that eye injury, thanks Nick, from that Nashville series, and he literally had to go to retrain his eye 3 times a day just to finish the playoffs. So I mean, of course it changed my tune on him a little bit. Like, he sold out for the team, he wanted the cup, and he believed in the Avs. When the season's said and done, I still did not believe Darcy Kuemper was the long-term answer for the goalie position for the Colorado Avalanche. I still, to this day, even with Georgiev in here, I still believe it's Pavel Francouz who should be the number 1. when you look at 5.25, I am very sure right now that Avalanche Twitter is ablaze. Why could we not pay him 5.25 when you're paying Georgiev just a little north of 3 and Frankie is making 2? But when it comes to Joe Sakic, you're not going to be paying for a stable of goaltending, like when that position has let you down at times, where you can easily go out. Like we still have Justus Annunen in the system that you can call up at any time to address that. The handling of Darcy Kuemper's contract is going to be confusing, and I'm interested to see how many games Washington gets out of Darcy Kuemper, because the defense in Washington is not what he had in Colorado, and I wonder if we're about to see Philip Grubauer Part 2 with Avalanche goalies going to a new destination.
I think to that point you mentioned, especially with the price point, Pierre LeBrun's tweeted out here that the contract is front loaded. So year 1, he's making that $6 million. In year 2 and year 3, he will be making that $6 million. And then year 4, he gets bumped down to 4.5. And then year 5, 3.75. So it seems like that he kind of maybe stuck with that, making $6 million next year. Don't know why, but there it is. Their first 3 years, he's making that $6 million.
I honestly hope it does work out for Washington, because you saw how they handled the playoffs. Like if they would have had a caliber goalie that could stay healthy, Darcy Kuemper's equipment fell apart like 3 times in the regular season. So like if you could have him stay healthy and his equipment stay together, I think Washington will be okay. But like I've never seen anybody's skates and pads fall apart, and his mask. Like Darcy Kuemper had a very bad luck year. So if he could get it together in Washington, they might be okay.
Can I ask about the socks situation with Darcy Kuemper? Like that's something that we always bring up on Locked On Predators.
I heard that it's like a very thin sock that is overstretched. It's almost like a hose. He doesn't go out there just like sockless. I have heard conflicting reports on what that is, but again, we are all talking about the goalie position, and name me a normal goalie and I will call you a liar.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So almost like the idea of Darcy Kuemper wearing like flesh colored Lululemon seems like more I don't know if that's less disturbing or not.
Is it like a Kevlar maybe? Like is that kind of what it is?
He's a Capital now. I don't have to defend him.
Take it to him. Take it to him.
Yeah, we're gonna need to bring in the Locked On Capitals on this.
Yeah.
Bring them, Sean, producer. If you hear this, we need to get some answers on the Darcy Kuemper sock situation right now. So yeah, we're still waiting for teams to come in. It sounds like, according to Darren Drager, there's still chatter around Nazem Kadri. He said Colorado's still in the mix, but we'll see. I guess it's a situation where, hey, maybe if he goes out and doesn't like the offers he's getting, maybe he does take a little bit of a discount to come back to Colorado.
You kind of wonder if he's testing the market, and with Johnny Hockey still out there, I wonder if the price that everybody's giving Nas right now, is that a little bit of a discount? Because again, you are investing in the youth of Johnny Hockey. And like, if you're talking a deal, it's contingent on if you're not landing that number 1. And I feel like Nas thought he was going to be getting number 1 money, and he's getting everybody's number 2 price. And I wonder if now Colorado looks a little bit more appealing at a discount.
Looks like some other chatter going on right now. John Klingberg, who really was sort of the only big name defenseman on the market. There wasn't a very big run on top level defensemen this year. Sounds like he's back to talking with the Dallas Stars. I think a lot of people kind of expected he might go back to Dallas. But that's still an option. And obviously Dallas would have a lot of problems if they lose John Klingberg and don't have a very good backup plan in place. So yeah, I mean, Klingberg to Dallas, kind of expected, maybe nothing earth shattering there.
I never really expected him to go. Yeah, like you mentioned, it didn't make sense for John Klingberg to leave Dallas. They have a very solid defensive core. They have a very good team, massive top six, or like a very solid top six, very skilled top six. And as well, I mean, tough not to be fun and excited to play with Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn. Plus, I mean, take a look at Jake Ottinger and what he did against the Calgary Flames in the playoffs. Like, he must genuinely, once that came through and the trade request, came through, I say that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And then the Stars went and did that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for him to stay. It's a solid team. I mean, you get to play against next to, a guy like Miro Heiskanen. I know he's older than Miro Heiskanen, but a fantastic defenseman. Esa Lindell is one of my favorite defensemen as well. They brought in Ryan Suter as well. So, I mean, it's a solid defensive core.
I reacted the way I did with that Klingberg back to Dallas because it's about to get worse before it gets better in Dallas. Seguin and Ben are getting older. They're not getting better. They're not getting younger. You don't want that career to have to go through one of those. It was almost like you had the chance to get out and go somewhere and be a part of something. But I mean, you kind of stick tap to him like he's going back and he wants to build there. So that speaks a lot to his character. But like the writing's on the wall, like they already have a new voice behind the bench. Like there's going to be a lot of different things going on in Dallas. And he had the opportunity to go somewhere and be kind of plug and play and be right there in the playoffs and make a push. It speaks a lot that he's going back to Dallas and he wants to be there for the build.
Yeah, I wonder if he talked with the new coach and the new regime kind of and just went, what's your plan? What do you want from me? And maybe that was the issue when he requested that trade offer or requested the trade, It was, I don't like what you're doing here. I don't really see me fitting in for the long term. Now he's went and chatted with the new group and they said, yeah, we want you. Obviously, you're John Klingberg. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him kind of backtrack the trade request last year too. So who knows? Maybe it was just kind of a heat of the moment. He wasn't happy with Rick Bowness. He wasn't happy with the way the contract negotiations were going and kind of just said, you know what, screw it. Let me test the market. Send me to a contender. Maybe it's on a better track now. Who knows? Maybe things all just time heals. I mean, look what happened to Jake DeBrusk in Boston.
Yeah,
had a trade request for over a year. All of a sudden, Bruce Cassidy gets fired, and he's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm good with staying."
Yeah, exactly. A guy that the Edmonton Oilers were taking a look at as well. So I'm not too happy about that. But exactly right. There's things are fluid. For the longest time, I thought, again with the Oilers, this kind of relates, but I thought Connor Brown was going to be coming to the Oilers for Puljujärvi. I thought Puljujärvi was going to be out. That's why I brought my jersey out. Now it sounds like it might be for picks. Things can be very fluid and can change not only from week to week, but day to day to hour. Things can always change, and that's the business. That's why they say hockey is a business. Anything can change. Nothing really is predictable. Yes, maybe we came into this free agency day with a little bit of expectations and a couple of deals already signed, but things can change just like that. Take a look at, let's talk about a little bit of a free agency way back when. Let's talk about the Oilers again. But Nylander, William Nylander's father, if you've ever heard of him, he was set to go to the Edmonton Oilers on free agent day in July 1st, 2000, I think it was 2007, 2008. And then all of a sudden a fax machine issue or something like that. And all of a sudden he's not an Oiler. things can change at any point, literally up to the point where you're putting pen to paper. So it's a fluid day. It's a fluid day.
I mean, you could see that by your top names still being out there. Everybody else in the world is getting signed up, and Johnny Hockey and Nas they're still floating out there. It was the most, like, the week leading into it, you knew they were definitely moving, and now the closer this gets to something happening, it might sound like Nas might be flirting with going back, and who knows with Johnny Hockey.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that in Nashville a couple of times with Mikhail Granlund. 2 years ago, David Boyle straight up said, yeah, he's going to test the market. He said that like a month in advance, made you think, yeah, that was just kind of a failed experiment. Granlund wound up signing a 1-year prove-it deal. Last offseason, the day of, like as soon as 12 o'clock hit, this release comes out of the report, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't sound like Mikhail Granlund's going to come back to Nashville. He's going to look at other offers. 4 hours later, press release comes from the Predators. We've re-signed Mikhail Granlund to a 4-year deal. And it's tough for teams right now. There's so much uncertainty with the cap. We had a flat cap this year. It sounds like it's not going to rise a whole lot next year, but we'll see. I mean, things can change from that regard too. So it's just hard. If you're a top free agent like Nazem Kadri, maybe you go out there, you think you're going to get like, $8-9 million a year, or, something with a lot of term on it. And you go out there and teams you want to play for aren't willing to give you that much. Now, there may be some teams that are kind of on that next tier, maybe like the Ottawa Senators or, somebody else who is willing to give you that much, but they don't entice you enough that you would want to go play for them or at least commit long-term. So then what do? You go back to the team in which you knew you had success, look at their offer and be like, you know what? I would rather take a discount, like a pretty decent contract, to play for this team that I know I have chemistry with, that I know I'm not going to have to uproot or move my family. I know I'm not going to have to try to rebuild chemistry with a bunch of strangers. I would rather do that than either take, a totally unfair deal with a contender or a big money deal with a team I don't really want to play for.
Well, that was exactly what happened with Evander Kane. I mean, the Edmonton Oilers went, oh, okay, you don't like our offer. You think you can get more in the free open market? Sure. Why don't you go and try it out? Well, him and Dan Milstein went to the market and said, okay, what can we get? And said, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll take this 4.125 in Edmonton and play with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, two guys that I've had a lot of success with, a city that I've already had success with and has been rather supportive around. I mean, in Edmonton, if you do anything on the ice for the Edmonton Oilers, you're going to be supported. So that's neither here nor there. But again, anything can happen. You take Evander Kane's name would have been up there as well in the Nazem Kadri, the Johnny Gaudreau, because I mean he's a first line top 3, top 6 guy. Now he's gone. Now we're talking about those two. But on that note, okay, now he's gone. Right now, those teams who were in on Evander Kane, who were going, oh, okay, well, is this our guy? Maybe, maybe not. Now they go, oh, okay, well, now it's only down to an Evander or a Nazem Kadri or Johnny Gaudreau. Is that really our guy? Now that really changes a bunch of things.
Yeah, and if you're a team in that situation too, and you see all these guys like going for big deals, if there's not a guy that you think is an absolute fit, like if you go all in on Johnny Gaudreau and miss, you don't have to necessarily panic by that next tier player. It's like if you miss on Johnny Gaudreau, I think that's the tendency for a lot of teams to be like, oh crap, like now we need a winger and we missed on Gadreau. So that's when you go out and give, a second tier player, just throwing this out there, like, Ondrej Burakovsky, a big $8 million deal that's kind of an overpay. We've seen that with so many teams over the past, decade or so. So I think that's sort of restraint for NHL GMs. And I think a lot of them have kind of learned that lesson, which is why you're seeing more things like the Evander Kane situation or the Mikhail Granlund situation I offered last year, maybe the Nazem Kadri situation with Colorado this year, where teams are not willing to overpay if they miss out on the absolute game changer guy they want. And so that's why there's maybe more of an openness for some of these players to go back on a deal that maybe they would have taken less than they would have, 3-4 years ago in the same situation.
And it's crazy when you see like the Trojek deal, like overpaying is kind of like, and the theme of the day, like why the names that are out there are still out there. And like you mentioned, like Burakovsky possibly getting a deal, like you cross your eyes and just like grit your teeth, and Burakovsky could be a good replacement for like Johnny Gaudreau. Like it's not, you're not having to pay as much. And with this flat cap, some teams are having issues even putting a team out there. So if you are in need for a plug and play, change your organization type player, like a Nas or Johnny Gaudreau, like you could be okay with a Burakovsky acquisition.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Well, you get a lot of the time out of free agency guys that all of a sudden you go, oh, this is what this guy can bring. Oh, kind of like what Jess said with a couple of the defensemen. What if there was just a bad situation or they weren't being utilized well, right? Like maybe those are the types of guys that you can get for $4 million or $3 million even, that you're kind of chipping into your lineup a middle six type guy, and then all of a sudden you go, oh okay, now we're really pushing the potential on this guy and really getting a lot out of him.
It seems to be just kind of a changing era when it comes to NHL moves. We've seen this on sort of the boring trade deadline days the past few years. There's a lot of guys that are on the market that, hey, 10 years ago would have absolutely been moved for big packages. Now you're seeing teams hold on to them a little bit longer, or, just not in a big rush to trade them. It seems like there's more patience when it comes to NHL GMs. Now, it's less fun for us because we would love something just totally off the wall to talk about. Or I would love to rush, home from school at 3:00 in the afternoon and immediately update my Chell rosters. But yeah, I mean, in terms of team building, it seems like NHL GMs are getting a little more cautious with making some of these big moves. I don't want to say timid, because as we've seen, there are some GMs out there that are willing to go all out to make the move they think is right. But, hey, it just seems like maybe a changing time period when it comes to big moves.
And especially with the quality of player that you get now in the draft and that you can develop in your system. And it's better to not overpay and trade for somebody's overpay and not have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's where the market and evaluations are shifting. Like, that's where Joe Sakic has made his name. Where teams realize we just wasted this entire season paying for this one player, and we go in there and draft a couple. We'll give you pick number 1 and pick number 3, and we'll take your second best player right off your hands. That's where value is.
Well, and then on top of it too, like, I mean, you mentioned the talent that you get out of the draft. The numbers that are available for these kids are immense. The numbers that they have available for players in the NHL right now are immense as well. And I mean, a guy, again, I'll bring up the Edmonton Oilers, but they just hired Ken Holland's son. Sounds kind of a bit of a favor, but it isn't, because the Edmonton Oilers have really been, and mostly Brad Lambert is a guy who really looks at those analytics. And Brad Holland is not the only guy in the NHL who's doing it. If he was, then the Edmonton Oilers would have won the Stanley Cup. Sorry, Kyle. But yes, there are guys all around the league that analytics teams just go, this is the guy, this is the guy, this is the guy. And some analytic teams going, that's not the guy, stay away, stay away. The numbers are subjective and objective at the same time, but it's a weird and different time now, because some organizations do adopt that numbers and analytics side, and there are some that are just like, no, it's the eye test only. So
yeah, and it's getting to be a lot easier, instead of jeopardizing the next 2 to 8 years of your organization, than to move one piece from your minor league system up and just kind of rise all tides, instead of adjusting from the top, letting everything else from the bottom float up, and then kind of shift it that way. It's getting a lot cheaper to do it that way, because what's the worst that can happen? Oh, this didn't work? Well, we know we can trade this piece next year, and we could go get something we need to fix now.
Another signing to talk about. This one's a little bit interesting. Mason Marchment to the Dallas Stars, 4 years, $4.5 million per. I like Mason Marchment. He was a guy, came out of absolute nowhere last year, looked like a career AHL guy, wound up having 47 points in 54 games for Florida. The analytics community really loves Mason Marchment, does a lot of things that really show up in sort of the microstats. We're kind of waiting to see maybe if that was just sort of a one-time thing, but Dallas betting big on Marchment, 4-year deal. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Mason Marchment's one of my favorite guys as well that was available. And the thing is that, yeah, he's got size too. He's an analytic beast, like you mentioned, but he's got the size as well. I mean, he's physical, he's mean. I'm just pulling up his stats here because last season, 18 goals, 29 assists, but he also had the 53 penalty minutes as well. Not exactly the most eye-popping stuff, but you take a look at some of the stuff that Mason Marchment did to get those penalties sometimes, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a guy, again, a guy who can do it all in numerous zones. So I really like Mason Marchment.
And this might be that stopgap that we were talking about with the Sagan and like Ben contracts and like them getting older. Like, this is something that will make that adjustment. It'll take the sting out of it for just a little bit. Like, he's an incredibly quality player, and you're not mortgaging the arena for that deal. So yeah, that's a really good deal and a really good player. And I think that's with Klingberg possibly going back to Dallas. Like, this might be an all right year for Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it feels like a lot of their success and how they go deep is A, can Jake Ottinger keep doing what he's been doing? And B, can you get Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn back to where they were even a few years ago? Because if they do, that's huge. I don't think you can rely on Joe Pavelski putting up like 80 points in his late 30s every single year from here on out. But, Dallas, hey, they have at least some pieces to build around. And it's one of those teams where if the right people get hot at the right time, then all of a sudden they are like sort of that weird fringe team that gets hot in the postseason and causes all kinds of chaos for top teams.
100%. And the thing too is like that fit with Dallas is that he's big, he's physical, he's a power forward, and that's what a lot of the top talent in the Dallas Stars organization really follows behind. Even look at Jason Robertson. He's not necessarily the toughest guy, but he's still got a little bit of a solidness to him, right? And Mason Marchment, not only is he physical, but let's take a look at my favorite stat is the goals for and goals against per 60 minutes. So that's I'm not a big analytics guy in any means or by any means, but I mention this number a lot, and so people kind of go, oh, this is analytic guy. But Mason Marchment, goals for per 60 minutes amongst guys who have played at least 500 minutes in the playoffs, in the NHL this season. He currently sits with a 4.88. That would have been good for, let's just take a look here, one of the best in the league. It was along with David Pastrnak. David Pastrnak was a comparable for him this season in regards to goals to minutes. That's not exactly a pushover type name.
No.
Mm.
A couple of other signings to get to. It looks like Brendan Smith, pretty underrated defenseman, I think, going to the New Jersey Devils. Again, it seems like the Devils are really going to try to go for it this year. 2-year contract, about $100,000 per year, $1,100,000. I don't know how math works. And then Charlie Lindgren. Maybe the best third string goalie in the NHL last year, cashing out with a 3-year deal worth about $1 million a year with the Washington Capitals. So the Capitals rolling with Lindgren and Kuemper next year. So yeah, interesting there. Love this quote on Twitter right now, and Kyle, you'll probably get a kick out of this. It says Nicolas Aube-Kubel signed in Toronto because the league was unhappy with him getting the Stanley Cup, so they sent him to a place where he won't get a chance to do that this year.
I don't understand what the Leafs are trying to do. Good luck with that. I don't know. You're gonna have to get that contract on the cheap because I think his best days are behind him, easily.
We have another addition to our Locked On NHL crew right now. Joining us now, Jason Hernandez from Locked On Ducks. Jason, how's it going, man?
Brett, I've calmed down. Don't worry.
Good.
It's a little insider. Anyway. Ready to talk about the moves or lack of moves the Ducks have made. Well, they made one move at least.
Yeah, well, how about that? Frankie Vatrano. We were talking about this earlier, and a lot of us like Frankie Vatrano. What do you think of that move?
It's a good depth piece for the Anaheim Ducks. I do think that the amount of money he got was probably on the higher end of what I expected him to get in free agency. But it's a good depth piece. He brings another weapon to the Ducks. I mean, he's a good middle six offensive player, which is what the Ducks need to fill their roster right now, because look at all the cap space they have. I don't know if you've checked Cap Friendly lately, but the Ducks still have by far the most money to spend. So they're not done yet. This is just hopefully the start. They still need to spend $15 million to get off the cap floor. And don't worry, they're not going to sign Bobby Bonilla to a contract.
Jason, I mentioned earlier, I think that Vatrano deal is not necessarily a direct replacement to Sonny Milano, but I think it kind of brings similar qualities. Am I out to lunch here, or what do you think of that?
He is the anti-Sonny Milano.
Oh, hang on, baby! That's called expertise.
Yeah.
In a lot of senses, the anti-Sonny Milano in that their styles are completely different. This is really a Pat Verbeek style kind of player. Not as much grit as Sonny Milano, but a little bit more skill and a little bit better in the transition game, which Sonny Milano was better down in front, down getting his big butt into goalies' faces or trying to get out of the way of Zegras Michigan goals. It's the transition game, which the Ducks struggled with last season. So this might be a completely different style of play that the Ducks are going to see. And this is really just complementary to the hire the Ducks made yesterday, which I talked about. They got a new assistant coach, Craig Johnson, who they plucked from the Ontario Reign. And this is the second time the Ducks have plucked a coach from the Ontario Reign. 2 years ago, it was Mike Stuthers. This season, it's Craig Johnson. And Craig Johnson was really instrumental in helping the Ontario Reign be one of the best AHL power play units. The Ducks, 2 years ago, were historically bad on the power play. Remember? It was like the worst in 2 decades. Under 10%. Wow. It was abysmal. So maybe having Johnson, who helped that power play, which used to be not so good, maybe that can help Anaheim in the long run. It's an on-the-man advantage. So we'll see.
Yeah. The one downgrade is hair, though. I don't think anybody was going to top the Sonny Milano. There we go. Brett may be the closest thing we have right now. It's like the Slater, peak Slater from Saved by the Bell.
Flow, baby.
Flow.
Flow.
Yeah, I wish I had Flow that good. Jason, we've been talking about each of our teams and kind of where we're at in free agency right now. The Ducks are in an interesting spot. Obviously, they have Trevor Zegras. They got Troy Terry. Those are two pretty good offensive pieces to build around. They look like they might have, for a while at least last year, maybe flirted with sneaking into the postseason. That obviously fell apart as they went down the stretch. Where do you think the Ducks are right now in terms of their rebuild? Do you see them maybe trying to accelerate that in any way, or do you see them trying to maybe stay the course and maybe let things play out as they are the next couple of years or so?
That's an interesting question because they just retained Dallas Eakins for an additional year, which a lot of fans. I'm gonna be kind here. They didn't take too kindly to Dallas Eakins coming back, considering how he benched Trevor Zegras before. Eakins, as you're familiar with, Brett.
Yep.
He used to coach the Edmonton Oilers. How did Dallas Eakins do as coach of the Oilers, Brett?
Well, one of my favorite things is that Dallas Eakins is in Anaheim dealing with a young core, and he did that so well in Edmonton. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's called being facetious. It wasn't great.
So you can definitely understand how Ducks fans felt when they saw, he's coming back for another year. What? Oh, no. Yes, really. That's happening.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So to further answer your question, the Ducks are kind of going to stay the course and continue this rebuild, or I guess re-up on the rebuild. They're not looking to accelerate it anytime soon, because next season is where the real draft is going to take place. Next year's draft is going to be much stronger. 1, 2. The Ducks have a lot of cap space, but they need to keep that cap space open because they need to re-sign Troy Terry, Trevor Zegras, Jamie Drysdale, etc., etc. They need to keep that cap space open to keep those guys happy. And how about another young guy that we gotta talk about? Mason McTavish! Come on. Dude lit it up in juniors. He nearly won the Memorial Cup. He won the OHL Cup. Sorry, Brett. Sorry he took out the WHL champions.
Yeah, thanks.
But McTavish was fantastic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I might go out on a limb with my predictions this year. I'm not going to say it yet, but I might really go out on a limb on predictions this season regarding McTavish. Yeah. So you talk about young prospects. Include McTavish in there as well. Overall pick, for crying out loud.
Yeah. You mentioned that draft next year. I think it's going to be interesting to see the trades around the draft picks for next year. Going into this year's draft, a lot of the talk, especially it seemed like a lot of teams were more poaching for next year's pick. Obviously, it's the Bedard draft. You never know where teams and the teams that you're trading with are going to end up at the end of the year. So a lot of teams were giving calls for that draft pick next year. So, like you said, it seems to be a lot of teams are not only building, this is obvious, they're not only building for next season, but you do build for the seasons afterwards. But it seems like teams are planning around the draft of next season, not just for next season in general, which they obviously are. They're professional hockey teams, but this draft seems relatively maybe not stacked or elite or loaded. It is a better draft than this year's, but it seems to be
this year's draft was a C. It was average.
Well, and the thing about this year's draft
C for Canadians.
Yeah. The thing about the draft this year is that a lot of the players lost an important year of development because of so many leagues being shut down, whether or not they went and played in Europe, well, especially the North American players, I should say, whether or not they went to play in Europe or whatever it may have been. An important year of development was lost. So yeah, right now that this draft class was average, but if they develop properly or develop in a certain way, may not be. But that's the thing, is that a lot of teams went and saw that and said, well, there's a lot we weren't able to see them play in important games, so we don't know what this guy can bring. We're drafting him off the stuff that we know, but not everything we know. Next year, there's been 2 full seasons now since most of the junior leagues around here have been down, and especially the major ones, especially up here in Canada with the CHL, and especially the OHL was hammered recently. Mm-hmm. So a lot of questions were coming out of this year's draft, but next year's draft, I think, for a long-winded answer about the draft on free agency day, that's how I said.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly feels like this is going to be a class this past year that is going to take a good couple years to really judge the impact of it, because, a lot of times you can kind of see, with a couple of full seasons in the CHL or maybe overseas, what, maybe at least what a player's ceiling could be if they develop the right way. And teams didn't really get a good look at this year's class. Next year, of course, it sounds like a very top-heavy draft. Of course, we got Connor Bedard, and it sounds like at least there's going to be, at least from the first round, very good in terms of depth, where you may be able to, maybe not always a franchise player, but you are probably going to be getting a very, very good player to build around for years to come if you have a first-round pick. And that may play into what happens this year. Maybe that causes the Arizona Coyotes to maybe pull a trigger on a Jacob Chychrun trade a little bit earlier, because they're going to value maybe having an extra pick in that first round. Maybe that's
they already have a lot of picks. Come on.
I mean, they have more picks than they do NHL arenas right now. Let's put it that way. But I'm sorry, Robin Leano, if you're listening to this right now. But yeah, I think you might see teams sort of, hold back in terms of that. And then
no team is tanking harder than Chicago, though.
No, yeah. You miss quite the conversation about that right now. It's a shame. So Kyle had some personal stuff that he had to go deal with right now, but it looks like Artturi Lehkonen, 5-year deal with the Colorado Avalanche. He was talking about that earlier. That was kind of high priority for the Avalanche to bring back. Yeah, I mean, that wound up being another kind of home run trade for Joe Sakic. Getting him over for the Montreal Canadiens, perfect middle six addition, and kind of that type of player that really you want in your middle six, the guy that has a little bit of offensive pop, 50, 60 points a year, maybe is the top out there, but very good in a lot of different aspects of the game.
Also, another depth signing, Eric Goodbranson going to Columbus.
Oh
man.
Somebody that I wanted to, low-key, to be honest with you, for the Oilers.
Really?
Yeah, only because now I want to see the numbers, because I think he was massively overpaid this past season. But the Oilers need, is he going to be a 7th guy? Maybe. Is he willing to? Maybe. But what I like about him is that he's a big guy, and he's defensive as well. Obviously, he's a defenseman, but that's something that the Oilers didn't have necessarily. And that's why I like him, is because he has relatively all right defensive analytics, especially from last year, especially for a guy who's not supposed to be exactly the slightest of foot or anything like that. But again, he did play on a very defensively strong Calgary team. So could those numbers been skewed? Potentially, probably. But I think he's a good ad for Columbus. It's a depth signing, but a veteran signing as well for a young club there. That's I think is a very solid signing.
Can I announce this one, please? Because I love this last signing that I kind of laughed at. The best chef in the National Hockey League, the best baker in the National Hockey League, is going to New York. So watch for Louis Domingue to open up a restaurant in Hell's Kitchen this season.
I mean, he's got to have spicy pork on the menu, right?
There it is.
Yes.
That's what I was waiting for.
Like, he's got to have that on the menu somewhere, right?
Yes.
Well, it's better in New York than it is elsewhere.
It's interesting because they also signed Yaroslav Halak earlier this year, or earlier today.
Yeah, he's back in New York, sort of.
Yet you suddenly have three goalies there in New York. So I don't know. Maybe Domingue is the third guy. Maybe if Halak, we know his injury situation's not the best, his quality isn't the best. Maybe this is insurance for one way or another. Now that they don't have Georgiev behind Shesterkin, kind of interesting to see what the Rangers are doing.
Oh, they're gunning for that right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're a good team. It's a tough loss, I think, for the Rangers to lose Andrew Copp. So it'll be interesting to see how they recuperate a guy like that. But I think they're a very solid team all around.
I do like the tweet that Greg Wyshynski just put out. It's just spicy pork and broccoli, like 240 times.
I said, open up that Hell's Kitchen spot, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite pizza places used to be over there since closed in the pandemic. But man, there's some good pizza down there. Can't wait to go there in less than 4 months, baby. Woo!
Oh, jealous.
Yeah, I'm running New York Marathon, guys. So,
are you or really?
Yes. I'm running New York Marathon this year. This will be my last major marathon in the States. I've run LA several times, ran Boston, ran Chicago a few years back. So this is the last one.
Good for you. I'm asthmatic, so that I'm already starting to get a little bit of
I've already planned my trip. I'm already planning to watch the Islanders at UBS Arena the following day. I am upset that the Rangers have a home game during the freaking marathon. Come on, man.
Of course.
Ugh.
Can you run to Madison Square Garden? Is the route past there?
No, it doesn't. The route it starts at Staten Island, goes through Brooklyn, goes through Queens, goes to the Bronx, ends in Central Park, doesn't pass through MSG. So I'll be missing hockey. But hey, you know what? That's fine. I'll just go to eat fancy pizza afterwards.
In Lou Domingo's place. Hey, he's going to be rolling out he's going to be rolling in the dough with the Rangers. He's going to be rolling in the dough with his pizza place. So.
Oh, nice.
Hey, we mentioned Andrew Copp just recently. Well, I did, so sorry for tooting my own horn. But it sounds like Detroit has made another pretty solid addition. It sounds like they have added David Perron as well from Frank Sayre Valley. So David Perron, Lucas Raymond, and as well Andrew Copp. That's it's a pretty fun. I mean, hey, Andrew Copp may not be on their first line, but I mean that's an exciting line.
Oh my,
I like that.
Yeah,
Nick Delorier, former Anaheim Duck, just got a 4-year deal with the Philadelphia Flyers.
Oh my god,
a Broad Street bully.
$2 million. $2 million.
Yeah. Justin Braun also going back to Philly. How about that?
Nick
what
Delorier.
What are the Flyers doing? What are the Philadelphia Flyers doing? I have not ever been through an off season where one team has confused me so much than the Philadelphia Flyers. What was their big thing about bringing in John Tortorella? Well, he's a defensive coach. He needs, defensive guys. What do? They re-sign Rasmus Ristolainen to a massive deal.
Yep.
Who can't play defense. They bring in Tony DeAngelo, one of the notorious one-way offensive defensemen in more ways than one.
Mm-hmm.
Like blue liners in the NHL.
Offensive or offensive?
Yeah. The answer to that is yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and then what do? It's like his big thing. Remember John Tortorella's quote was that this seems like a divisive locker room. You bring in Tony DeAngelo.
Yeah. Really good locker room guy here.
Yeah, who basically got kicked off the team after a teammate punched him in the face. Like, what are they doing? And now, what? You don't have the cap space to go after Johnny Gaudreau. It's not a fit anymore. But Nick Delorier, you have 20 Nick Deloriers on the team. What are you doing, Flyers?
Broad Street bullies reincarnated. That's what's happening in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
literally.
Are they secretly tanking? Is this just the most under the radar tank job? Are they is Fletcher secretly a brilliant GM that is disguising himself as the dumbest GM in the NHL? It's watching the TV show Survivor, where it's that one guy that everybody thinks is an idiot. He gets to the final three, and then all of a sudden he has this eloquent speech about how he played everybody. When the Flyers draft Connor Bedard first overall next year, is he just going to get up there and be like, this was it all along? I played everybody in the NHL.
The tribe has spoken on this one, and all signs indicate to maybe.
Yeah. The other possibility is that he's just not a very good general manager.
Yeah, I'd probably take a flyer on that one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
Well done.
Thank you. The other thing, we mentioned Eric Goodbranson. That's why I wanted to see the AAV. It's $4 million AAV. So,
what an overpay!
Do you still want that deal in Edmonton?
Nope. You know what? Hey, I'm cool with Brett Kulak. And hey, if Slater Cuckoo wants to come back, you know what? You do you.
There we go.
He is the walrus.
Yeah. Sorry, just another thing. This is kind of backtracking to a little while ago. But it seems like we're on a little bit of a freeze here. But we mentioned Darcy Kuemper's breakdown of the contract, and it seemed like he wanted $6 million. Well, it seems like he's getting it in the first 3 years. It's kind of the opposite with Jack Campbell and the Oilers. Pierre LeBrun just tweeted out the breakdown for his contract. In year one, he's going to be making $3.5 million as a salary. And then year two, $5 million. Year three, 5.4. Year four, 4.2. And year five, 3.9. So just all over the place, but that also allows Edmonton to have a little bit extra cap space this year, not necessarily next year, then the year before. They're very, I don't understand how you can go, oh, okay, well, we can do this, but not that, but then this, and then there. What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like the thing for the Oilers is have as much cap as you can right now, and as much, salary as you can spare right now, because you want to keep Connor McDavid happy. You want to keep Leon Draisaitl happy. And they don't seem very happy with the way the playoff exits have been going, last season aside. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like the Oilers know that if there's a window right now and they need to do everything they can to kind of maximize that window right now. So it makes sense. Anytime you're talking about a goalie, we saw this with Matt Murray going to Ottawa. Anytime you give a goalie a big contract, it's a gamble. So it almost seems like you would want to make the gamble now as opposed to, 3 years from now if it doesn't work out and you need to buy him out or move him. That makes that contract a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I mean, you see what the Oilers are at least doing here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, you got the soup, baby.
We got the soup and the stew. We got the soup and the stew with Stuart Skinner. Somebody mentioned in the chat there, Brendan said in the chat, the soup and the stew, that's all we need.
Yep, Bakersfield Condors legend Stuart Skinner.
Oh yeah, baby. And the greatest Muzzy probably in the league, I'm going to say.
Yep.
Well, Middleton's is pretty nice, but I think just that...
Let's Phil Forsberg, too.
Oh, of course.
Oh, gosh,
yeah.
Of course. Yes. No, we got some good facial hair around
here. That's
right?
partially why I love covering the AHL, because you see some really bizarre facial hair out there. And they experiment in the American Hockey League and see if it carries over.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the AHL is for. It's the facial hair development. Right there.
Speaking of AHL, this is not really like an NHL contract, but this might be AHL tangent. Andrew Podorowski signed with the Seattle Kraken. He'll likely be possibly the first captain for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. Right down the road from me.
Oh, cool.
I cannot wait to see that new arena open up, but that's kind of tangential. But
that's the coolest name in the AHL.
The Firebirds.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness.
Mm-hmm. Everything it seems like the Seattle Kraken are doing right now is just cool. Like the logo's cool, the arena's cool, the atmosphere's cool. Even the AHL franchise name is cool. So, it just seems like everything they're doing, besides the expansion draft, they're knocking out of the park.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, now you kind of see why, though. Well, I mean, I guess that may be kind of a reactionary response, but you kind of see why they kind of took a whole bunch of role guys. I mean, hey, they ended up walking out of that draft with the projected first overall pick up until basically the draft. Well, until Bob McKenzie sent out his rankings, final rankings with Slafkovsky on the top. They're walking out of there with Matty Beniers and Shane Wright as their 1-2 punch for their future.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
They still have money to spend. I mean, they might not be done in this free agent frenzy.
Yeah, well, I mean, currently right now they're sitting with $23 million with projected cap space.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to Anaheim.
It's called chunk change. But yeah. You're like, oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. We've been past that a while ago. Yeah, no. And hey, they also signed Justin Schultz too. Veteran defenseman, sounds weird to say, but a veteran defenseman, Stanley Cup champion as well. He's going to go play on a quietly decent, I would say, a back end for the Seattle Kraken, if they can retain some of them as well. Vince Dunn, Adam Larson, Carson Sauchi. I'm sure some of them are going to be on the way out as well, but Jamie Alexiak as well back there too. So a strong defensive team there.
Yeah, and if you're the Seattle Kraken, there's a lot of good pieces to move. If for some reason you're not good again, there's a lot of those guys that you can move and try to hit another home run or get some extra picks in the draft this year. So, maybe not the best opening in terms of the roster build for the Seattle Kraken off the bat, but other than everything after Philip Grubauer, they seem to be getting pretty good value down the road. One other signing to announce right now, it looks like Jan Ruda, who is a underrated piece of the Tampa Bay Lightning's core. He's going to the Pittsburgh Penguins. 3-year contract, $2.75 million a year. Pretty good depth signing for the Pittsburgh Penguins, who it seems like the back end of their defense was kind of maybe what hurt them down the stretch last year. They get a pretty good guy in Ruda who played very, very well for the Tampa Bay Lightning. One of the best players in the playoffs for them on the blue line, I thought.
Yep, absolutely. And the Penguins, another depth piece, and I think they've pretty much rounded out their roster now, combined with the signing of Gino.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%. Well, I first saw that deal and I thought it said 3 years, 8.25 AAV. And I was like, whoa, give me a minute here. I know Tampa Bay has been making a lot of very questionable signings so far today, but is Pittsburgh going to follow suit? So thank goodness it's only a 2.75 million AAV, which, like you said, he's an underrated defenseman, but that's similar to, in fact, it's almost the exact same contract as what's his name? Brett Kulak. That's his name.
Right.
So a little bit of a comparable there, because I think they are two very underrated defensemen who can do it in their own end as well. But I think a great addition for Pittsburgh Penguins.
You know how we were talking about iffy contracts with Eric Goodbranson?
Yes.
According to Elliot Friedman, Ben Sherratt's contract in Detroit, 4 years, $4.75 million a year. Does anybody want to let that one marinate for a hot second?
Yeah.
What the what is going on?
You were not here when we were talking about this earlier. If this was any other team, we'd be like, oh my God, what are they doing? The fact that it's Steve Yzerman is making us go, oh crap, what did everybody miss on Ben Sherratt? Like, what are we missing? Like, what is there?
I don't get it. Again, a team that's $23 million away from the cap, and I guess you got money to burn, so why not? if nobody else is going to pick them up, you might as well. And today's the day of overpaying.
I just said, holy overpays around the league. There's more than a few of them.
Yeah.
Our buddy JJ at Winging It Motown just said, trust the Yzer plan is going to get a big workout today.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And it's an interesting thing for Detroit too, because as we mentioned earlier, they got Dylan Larkin, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent coming up. Tyler Bertuzzi, an unrestricted free agent coming up.
Yeah.
So they're going to have some tough negotiations with players coming up here too. So it seems like you might want to conserve some of that cap space, but hey, maybe this is, Steve Yzerman's best bet is go out there and try to be good this year to convince everybody to come back.
Oh, you mean kind of like the cap situation in Tampa?
Yeah, sure.
Or
it got them the cup, so
better than the cap situation in Las Vegas. Oh wait.
Oh
yeah, Vegas has a cap situation.
Oh wait.
Not if you ask a couple people inside the organization.
Not if you ask if you need Dodonov.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you think he gets moved again, or at this point, are
yes.
you like, oh, you can't?
Oh yeah.
You have to.
He's got to move, right? Like, you can't bring him back after all that. Although I will say, if they do bring him back and he winds up having like a huge year for Vegas Golden Knights, is this not going to go down in lore as like one of the wildest stories of all time?
Yes.
They're going to have more egg on their face than the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Which is tough to do.
That is true. Yeah, for multiple reasons.
And as someone that covers the Ducks, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
There we go.
There's a hatred amongst both Ducks and Kings fans about their hatred of the Golden Knights.
They took your colors, except for the orange, right? That's what the deal is.
It's more than that. I'm not going to get into that right now. No.
I think that's just on the basis.
Yeah, that's the base. Just quick aside, they're making their gold jerseys the permanent home jerseys. No, that's not it.
God.
No,
man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I take that back. They did not take your colors because that is horrendous.
We could do jersey talk another day, but this is free agency talk.
That's somehow worse than the Predators mustards from back in the early 2000s.
We're hammering on everybody now. Everyone's catching strays.
Everybody's catching strays. So we have about 15 minutes left in our Locked On NHL Free Agency live stream. So let's just take a quick reset at some of the big moves made today. The big headline is Johnny Gaudreau still on the board. Same with Nazem Kadri. In terms of big signings, we have Claude Giroux going to the Ottawa Senators, Jack Campbell going into the Edmonton Oilers. You guys finally get yourself a goalie, Brett. And then a bunch of re-signings for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They got Mikhail Sergachev, Eric Chernak, and Anthony Cirelli coming back for 8 years. Plenty of more we're missing. Andrew Copp to the Detroit Red Wings on a 5-year deal. Vincent Trojek, a 7-year deal to the New York Rangers. Robert Thomas to St. Louis, an 8-year deal. That's a re-signing. He was a restricted free agent. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Darcy Kuemper, another one, 5 years to the Washington Capitals. Washington Capitals completely rebuilding their thing, or their goalie core. And then Arturi Lehkonen re-signing with Colorado, 5-year deal. Maybe that prices them out of Nazem Kadri. Who knows? So what has stood out for you guys? What are like maybe 1 or 2 signings that really you think move the needle today?
For me, the first one that pops into my head, well, is a little bit of that Vincent Trojek one. As you mentioned, that 7 years is just, whoa. Like, I get it, but I don't know if the New York Rangers are going to be a contender for 7 years. That's a lot for me. And then I think the thing that we haven't really mentioned, and it isn't really a free agent signing, but it's a re-signing, and it's basically been most of the stuff that the Tampa Bay Lightning have done, because they're kind of backloading or kind of re-signing a couple of players, but those AAVs are just out to lunch. I don't know what's going to be going on.
That's
Especially
the one
Chernak.
I was going to say. Yeah, Chernak, 5.2 AAV. Yeah, that's a big cap hit for Chernak, I think. Maybe they're going to the new generation of stars, considering that some of their others are close to retirement.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
The other one that kind of moved the needle for me a little bit was Robert Thomas, because that was a big signing. I mean, you got to talk about, $8 million, 8 years, and 8x8 for Robert Thomas.
Yeah.
Let's see how that one plays out. I mean, he is young. He is still 23. But that one, I think, kind of moved the needle for St. Louis in the Western Conference. Let's see. Let's see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly seems like he is still waiting on that first breakout year. 77 points and 72 last year. They expect him to kind of move to that next step. And it sounds like St. Louis really does need kind of a new star to build around. It doesn't sound like Tarasenko is going to be back for much longer. He's been on the trade block. We know St. Louis is kind of moving their cap. Jordan Kyrou is somebody else who has kind of jumped out of nowhere to be a big contender for them. So they seem to be sort of rebuilding their core on the fly.
That rebuild is for Rob Thomas. That is a smooth transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think a signing that we didn't really talk about too much today, but I think has gone very under the radar. It hasn't. Cap Friendly has it as unconfirmed, but his agent Dan Milstein has confirmed it, so I'm going to say it's confirmed. 4 years, 4.75 per year for Ilya Mikheyev to the Vancouver Canucks. I love Ilya Mikheyev. He's one of the best penalty killers in the league, I think, and he scored 21 goals this past season and was the second highest shorthanded goal scorer in the NHL. Now he's signed for $4 million, 4.75 AAV. I think he's good, maybe not that good.
Yeah, that's a lot of money for a guy that conceivably plays best, maybe 12, 13 minutes a game and gets a bulk of special teams time. But we'll see. I mean, Vancouver doesn't seem like they're done making moves. There's still the question of what happens with JT Miller. They brought back Brock Besser, so you would think that would kind of mean JT Miller's cap hit is going to go off the books in some way or another. They also just have some bad contracts in Vancouver right now. Hey, remember Tucker Pullman Remember that guy?
Oh,
Hey, also another deal that we may have, if this happened a couple of minutes ago, maybe we would be talking about it in this segment. But it sounds like Ondrej Burakovsky is off to Seattle.
5-year deal, according to Chris Johnson. That just came down.
That's not a bad way to build the Kraken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Kraken have space. I mean, they can go out and kind of take a flyer on somebody like this.
Now they're making good decisions.
Yeah.
It took a year. They needed the backlash, but it's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's how you build an expansion team. You build them from the ground up. You build them. You know, I'm gonna go a little bit NBA here. You kind of building them up like the Orlando Magic did in the 80s when you had. I'm aging myself here, but not really. or even worse, the way the Toronto Raptors built themselves up in that 95-96 expansion draft. Remember how bad that expansion draft was?
Yeah.
Their star was Damon Stoudemire.
No, hold on. I love Damon. Mighty Mouse.
I love Mighty Mouse.
Yeah,
I love
Mighty Mouse.
No, Damon Stoudemire, one of the, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Love Damon Stoudemire. Oliver Miller was a Toronto Raptor. But look, the way Toronto built themselves from the ground up, it was the secondary deals the Raptors made that propelled them to a really good team. I think back to the 2001 Eastern Conference where they nearly beat the Sixers. So going way back here. The way that team was built. And they got a title. So I'm kind of seeing Seattle just build their way up slowly.
And that Toronto team that lost to Philadelphia came down to the final shot. So it's not necessarily they were out of it.
I loved that Toronto team. That was one of my favorite teams to watch back in the day. Love that team.
The guy producing this, Sean Woodley, he's the host of Locked On Raptors, and he is letting his feelings be known in our private chat right now.
They had Charles Oakley and Oliver Miller.
Hey, that was a fun team.
Yeah, that was a fun team. One of the best looks in the NBA, the purple and red with the black on the back.
Duh.
Yeah. Hey, this is a hockey podcast, isn't it?
Is it?
It might be.
Those jerseys were awesome.
Yeah. Here's an interesting one. This just came down from Bob McKenzie. There seems like there's going to be a Stahl Brothers reunion in Florida. According to him, Mark Stahl is signing a 1-year deal with the Panthers, $750,000. Eric Stahl going on a PTO.
How do you get that? How do you do that on free agent day? I was going to say July 1st. It's not July 1st. How do you sign PTOs today? What are you doing? Are they just at the house of the Stahl brothers and just going, hey, we'll give you a contract. We'll see what you can do right now.
Are they calling up Carolina right now, trying to frantically make a deal for Jordan Stahl to bring him in, and just having look, here's a complete sideshow as their third line.
Yeah. They're like, hey, we lost Mason Marchment. Here's the Stahl brothers.
Yeah. How would you like somebody who's worse for $6 million a year more?
Yeah,
he
was
well
good
in the AHL. Watch that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, he'll be an AHL star in the playoffs, just like James Neal was this past year.
Oh God! Predators legend James Neal.
Oh yeah.
What am I wrong?
Somewhere in here.
If he gets Milan Lucic out of Edmonton, then he's a legend in any sense. So that's fine. That's fine to me. Even if he scored 19 goals, it's fine.
Yeah. So we're running out of time real quick. We got a couple of minutes left. Let's go back to the headliners. Johnny Gaudreau. It's not a lot of movement on him. Sounds like maybe New Jersey's the front runner. Sounds like the Islanders may be in it. Sounds like the Flyers are out of it. Does it seem like there's a matter of just when, not if, with Gadreau and the Devils at this point? Or is there somebody else out there that may swoop in?
Yeah,
I think he's going to Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah. I when I woke up this morning, I kind of accepted that he was going to be a Flyer. And then all of a sudden, with all of my Twitter notifications, I got the stark reality that probably isn't going to be a thing. Unfortunately, yeah, I think he goes to the Devils again. I've covered the Oilers for a little bit here, but I've been a lifelong Oilers fan, and being able to see what Gadreau has done in Calgary is insurmountable. But I don't think that him going to New Jersey really does anything for either side. Yes, I mean, a fantastic hockey player, whatever team he's going to be going to is going to get better. But I forget. I think it was you, Nick. So excuse me if I'm putting words in your mouth here, but somebody mentioned earlier that him and Jack Hughes are very similar type of players.
Yeah.
So can that work sometimes? Yes, absolutely. But they're both undersized. I mean, they're not an exciting big team, really. Their forward cores are guys like Dawson Mercer and Nico Hischier. I don't know if that's the right move for either spot.
Nazem Kadri. He's still on the board. There was talk maybe Colorado's still in the mix. Do we see a reunion there, or does he go maybe help out a team like the Calgary Flames?
Well, Colorado got Josh Manson, so anything can happen now. I am sad. Yeah, really. I am sad about Manson going back to Colorado because there was rumor that he might come back to Anaheim and serve some kind of captaincy. But now that Manson signed that 4-year, $4.5 million with Colorado, yeah, they're bringing back that D core. They look good. Colorado looks ready to bring it back.
Also, really quickly, it sounds like there is a UFA that has hit the market. Jaromir Jagr has tweeted out saying, NHL GMs, I'm also a free agent. Again, he's 6'3", 265, 50 years old. That's fine. But then he also adds that his team in the Czech Liga is also looking for a defenseman. No jokes.
No jokes. Call me anytime. That's what he said.
Yes, call me anytime. What would free agency be without a little bit of your Jaromir Jagr talk?
Yeah. He's seeing the money that Eric Gabranson and Ben Sherrod are making and be like, God, I've got to be at least worth something, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've got to get some money out there.
Pedigree alone.
Yeah. All right. Well, I believe we're hitting 3:00, which means it's time for us to wrap up. Quick plugs.
Noon for me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Hey, here in the Eastern time zone. Brett,
Here in the
real
best
quick,
coast.
plugs for you guys. Brett, where can the people find you?
The people can find me personally at The Real Holden 40, but you don't want to hear about me. You want to hear about the Edmonton Oilers, so you can tune in to Locked On Oilers on YouTube and wherever you find your podcasts at Locked On Oilers. And you can also find us on Twitter at Locked On Oilers as well, just how it sounds. It's easy.
Jason, what about you?
Okay, look. If you want to hear some crap talk, you could follow my personal Twitter at StimpyJD. You could hear crap talk about other guys. You could hear me talk about musical theater if you want. Yes, I do talk about musical theater sometimes. Or game shows because I've been on a few of them. Or general talk at StimpyJD, as in Ren and Stimpy, as in the greatest Snick tune of all time, aside from Doug. But yeah, at StimpyJD, the show's Twitter, where I talk about a lot of Duck stuff, at LO_Ducks. That's where you can find me, and you can find my podcast. It's free and available across all platforms, including Odyssey, Stitcher, Podbean is one of them. Not Smoke Signal, not Morse Code, not Ham Radio, maybe Ham Radio. But yeah, wherever you hear your podcasts, and follow the Ducks.
Yeah.
Love that old school logo, baby.
There we go.
These are the GOAT colors. These are the GOAT colors right here.
They really did. The Ducks became not fun to watch when they lost the Mighty. They were the fun Disney team before that. Then they became the Corey Perry, Ryan Kessler, absolute chaos. Terrible to root for.
They won a cup in those jerseys.
Sure.
For what it's worth.
If it makes you feel better, yes.
But still, GOAT logo.
That is true. I'm Nick Morgan. You can find me and my partner in crime, Ann Kimmel, every weekday on the Locked On Predators podcast. You can find that wherever you get your podcast. Also, find us on YouTube. Search our Locked On Predators and you'll get there. You can find me personally at _NS Morgan on Twitter, or go to ontheforecheck.com and read my written work. That is going to do it for today for the Locked On NHL podcast live stream of the free agency big signing day. I don't know if we have an official title or not, but that's what it is now. Be sure to check us out and all of the Locked On NHL channels podcasts for news on signings throughout the day. And I'm sure everybody is going to have a big reaction show tomorrow morning. So make sure you're tuning in then. Until then,